Chapter 1671. Portia saw the news too. She turned to look at Chen Zhao, who was eating dinner. Chen Zhao had been eating since evening. Portia didn't know how much Chen Zhao had eaten. 10 portions? 20 portions? Is it this news? Portia saw Chen Zhao's expression. She could roughly confirm that it was this piece of news. However, she didn't understand why Chen Zhao had asked Leberg to broadcast this obviously fake news. To create social panic? How bored was Chen Zhao? Why would he want to create social panic? Of course, Chen Zhao wouldn't explain it to Portia. Pack up. I'm going out for a walk. Boss, do you need me to go with you? No, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Chen Zhao drove to the abandoned toll station on the Sibrut Coast Highway. There was very little traffic on the road at night. Chen Zhao parked the car by the roadside. He hoped that his method would work. If it didn't work, he would have to do it himself. Chen Zhao had originally planned to create a supernatural event if it didn't work. Then he would create a supernatural event himself. However, it would definitely have a negative impact. If it wasn't necessary, Chen Zhao wouldn't do it. Suddenly, Chen Zhao saw two figures dressed strangely. They had searchlights on their heads and strange equipment on their bodies. They even carried a square box on their backs. One of them was also holding a device. The two were walking toward the abandoned toll station. Chen Zhao perked up. They're here. Wait. Why don't they have magic? Vanderseer and Jamet were both supernatural enthusiasts. They even had a website. They'd come because of the news. They hoped to get material here. Vanderseer held the device he'd made. They called it a soul detector. Jamet was holding a video camera. Vanderseer, do you think we can succeed? I think it should be fine, Vanderseer said. The news is on TV. People were attacked by evil spirits here. So it must be true. If we can get some useful material and put it on our website, it'll be popular. But what if the evil spirits attack us? Don't worry, Jamet said. We have equipment. If we encounter danger, we just need to press a button, and our clothes will be electrified. Are you sure our electrified clothes will work on evil spirits? I think so, Jamet said. We're not doing research. The soul should be some kind of magnetic energy. This magnetic energy is in an unstable state. If this magnetic energy comes into contact with the electric current, it will increase this unstable state. But these are all your speculations. Jamet and Vandersel didn't know that Chen Zhao had overheard their conversation. Chen Zhao secretly chuckled. That Jamet guy's analysis was pretty close to the truth. However, their understanding of evil spirits was still insufficient. Evil spirits were indeed a form of magnetic energy, but they will interfere with other energy fields. For example, when some evil spirits appeared, they could affect the normal use of some electrical appliances. Suddenly, the needle of the instrument in Vanderseer's hand started to jump. An evil spirit had appeared. Both Vandersar and Jamet tensed up. Where is it? Where is it? A figure was approaching them, but they couldn't see it. As the figure got closer and closer, the needle on the meter jumped even more frantically. At this moment, the square backpacks on their backs suddenly emitted a burst of green smoke. Oh no, there's a malfunction. The two hurriedly took off their backpacks. The backpack was the battery that they carried with them. It was used to power the devices on them. But strangely, even though they'd lost power, the needle on the instrument in Vandersar's hand was still jumping. That's weird. Why is the detector still working? Suddenly, the abandoned toll station behind them lit up. Both of them were startled and looked at the abandoned toll station. There was a figure standing inside. It was a charred body. Black smoke was rising from the figure's body. That's. Both Jamet and Vandersel were frightened, even though their goal was to find a ghost. But when they really faced a ghost, they were still filled with boundless fear. Chen Zhao watched from the side and didn't interfere. Did you record it? Vandersar asked in fear. Even though they were about to piss their pants, they still didn't plan on running. The camera seems abnormal. The camera's monitor kept flashing. Suddenly, there was an explosive sound from the camera. Then a burst of green smoke rose. It was burnt. The magnetic field on the evil spirit had already caused all their instruments to malfunction. Ah, so hot, so hot. Chen Zhao realized that they seemed to have fallen into an environment created by the evil spirit. Chen Zhao touched his chin. Should he interfere? After all, they were ordinary people. Chen Zhao's duty was to not let ordinary people get involved in supernatural events. Moreover, these two ordinary people had come here. In the end, it was all because of Chen Zhao. Just as Chen Zhao was hesitating, another figure appeared. Chen Zhao's eyes brightened. Spiritualist. Which? Sam Mira rushed to the abandoned toll station with surprising speed. God of Void, please reach out with your dark tentacles and pull these two innocent souls out of their confusion. Sam Mira chanted an incantation. Two dark tentacles reached out from the darkness and slapped the two of them. Their eyes cleared up immediately. But in that instant, they broke down and screamed as they ran away. They had just faced the car accident that had happened before. Just like the evil spirit, they felt the same way. Sam Mira looked at the evil spirit in the toll station. Ancient God, dispel the unclean with your light of wisdom. Chen Zhao saw the witch's magic. She was probably using the ancient god's magic. It was a system different from demon magic. They were using the power of the ancient god. The ancient god that Sam Mira borrowed was the ancient god of light. The surrounding elements started transforming into a radiant body. The radiant body grabbed the evil spirit. The evil spirit struggled, but it couldn't break free of the radiant body. Gradually, the unclean on the evil spirit was dispelled, and its body was assimilated. In the West, this method was called purification. In the East, it was called transcendence or ascension. Simply put, it was turning the evil spirit's soul into pure light. It was just a method to kill the evil spirit. Religion, however, has always assigned a sacred name to this mode of destruction. 9 Heavens God Emperor. Chapter 1672. Who is it? Sam Mira realized that another person had come. When he turned around, he realized that it was an Asian. Who are you? Like you, I'm a spiritualist. I saw this news on the news, so I came to exorcise the evil spirit. Chen Zhao shamelessly said the script he'd prepared. I see. Sam Mira looked at Chen Zhao, no longer suspecting him. Are you a local spiritualist? Chen Zhao asked. No, I'm here to travel, Sam Mira said. Chen Zhao's expression collapsed. I got scammed just like that. Fuck, I spent millions of dollars. I got scammed again. Sam Mira saw the disappointment in Chen Zhao's eyes. She didn't understand where Chen Zhao's disappointment came from. However, Chen Zhao clearly didn't want to waste any more time. He turned around and left. Why are you leaving? Didn't you already destroy the evil spirit? There's no point in me staying here. Chen Zhao didn't even want to talk to her anymore. Anyway, he was very disappointed. But on second thought, he realized that he could stay here. No one would know that the evil spirit had been destroyed anyway. Suddenly, Chen Zhao thought of another idea. If he couldn't find them tonight, he could find the evil spirit group in the association. Sam Mira saw Chen Zhao return to the car. She remembered that she'd seen the car when she'd come. This person had been here for a long time. He'd also seen the two people being attacked, but hadn't done anything. He'd only appeared after she'd appeared. This was too strange. What was his goal? Sam Mira couldn't figure out Chen Zhao's goal. Perhaps she should test him. Sam Mira walked to Chen Zhao's car. Sir, how should I address you? My surname is Chun. Mr. Chun, you have other motives, don't you? Sam Mira asked bluntly. Chen Zhao sat in the car and glanced at Sam Mira. Where are you from? Washington. You're a local spiritualist? I'm also here for fun. I'm from Los Angeles, Chen Zhao said. You've been here for a long time, but you didn't do anything to protect those two people. What do you want? Sam Mira's tone was a little interrogative. That evil spirit is not fatal. What's wrong with teaching them a lesson so that they won't risk their heads in the future? Although Chen Zhao's explanation made sense, Sam Mira still felt that it wasn't as reasonable as it seemed. But don't you think that would be dangerous? We're all adults, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. I'm not a volunteer police officer. If they were really in danger, Chen Zhao would really help. But the facts also proved that they did not really encounter a fatal threat. That evil spirit wasn't deadly in the first place. But the news has already reported that someone was attacked here and died. That's why I came to take a look. But as a spiritualist, shouldn't we protect ordinary people? I heard that the evil spirits here have existed for a long time. Why haven't the local spiritualists exterminated them? You want me and you, an outsider, to take care of it after something really happens? Chen Zhao smiled, his face full of disdain. Actually, in Los Angeles, the supernatural organization and the idol spiritualists maintained a tacit understanding. As long as evil spirits did not do evil, they would not actively exterminate them. If it was just a small prank, the local spiritualists would most likely chase it away, not exterminate it. Unless there were casualties, the spiritualists would not kill. This was because there were many evil spirit organizations in the world. For example, the Evil Spirit Society that had ruled the underground world for 200 years in New York. If they really exterminated evil spirits on a large scale, they would eventually suffer revenge from the organization. Evil spirits were produced almost every day, but it took 10 to 20 years to nurture a qualified human spiritualist. Thus, in the spiritual world, humans and evil spirits always maintained a balance of not interfering with each other. Thus, Chen Zhao's accusation was even more groundless. Just then, two more people appeared in Chen Zhao's vision. Chen Zhao perked up. Sam Mira noticed Chen Zhao's gaze. Turning his head, he saw two spiritualists approaching the abandoned toll station. Chen Zhao immediately perked up. He got out of the car and walked toward the two spiritualists. "Hey, are you local spiritualists?" Chen Zhao asked. Sabonis and Rashid exchanged glances. Vigilance appeared on their faces. Sabonis glanced at Chen Zhao, and then at Sam Mira. "Who are you? You're not a local spiritualist. I don't think I've seen you before." Hearing Sabonis' words, Chen Zhao's face finally brightened. "Are you from the White Spear Society?" "No, I've never heard of it." Sabonis and Rashid exchanged a subtle look and turned to leave. More accurately, they were running away. "Wait!" Chen Zhao grabbed Sabonis and Rashid with both hands. "Let go!" Sabonis and Rashid did not seem to want to talk to Chen Zhao. They seemed to be in a hurry. "If you don't let go, we won't be polite. You should seriously consider my suggestion," Chen Zhao said with a faint smile. Sabonis attacked Chen Zhao directly. Death Poison Mist. Curse plus Voodoo Magic? That was a new and interesting spell. Actually, the so-called new spell was different from traditional demonic spells. It was not a spell that relied on complicated spells. Instead, it was just a combination of two spells. As long as Chen Zhao could solve the problem of releasing two spells at the same time, there would be no more difficulties. Chen Zhao inhaled heavily and sucked the poison mist into his mouth. Sabonis, Rashid, and Sam Mira behind them were all shocked. Chen Zhao actually sucked the evil spell into his mouth. It was like a person drinking a bottle of sulfuric acid. "It tastes good." Chen Zhao smiled. Rashid's expression darkened. His body suddenly turned into an ice cube. Cold air flowed along Chen Zhao's palm and soon froze his arm. Still not letting go, Chen Zhao only used a bit of force, and the ice on his arm shattered. "If you think you can win with this temperature, you're very wrong." "Sir, I think you should control yourself," Sam Mira said. "You look like an evil spiritualist." Hearing Sam Mira's words, Sabonis and Rashid realized that the witch was not with Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao turned around and glanced at Sam Mira. He felt that the woman was about to attack him. "Miss Witch, this is between me and them. It has nothing to do with you." Chapter 1673. It matters now. Sam Mira stared at Chen Zhao coldly. She could feel that Chen Zhao's intentions were very unclear. When she'd appeared, he'd actively approached her. Then he'd actively approached Sabonis and Rashid. After learning that they were local spiritualists in New Orleans, he'd attacked them. This made Sam Mira feel that it was Chen Zhao's scheme. In reality, she wasn't wrong. It was all Chen Zhao's scheme. If you want to find them, you should let them go, not catch them. "Sorry. That's my style." Chen Zhao clearly didn't plan on letting them go. He'd spent so much effort to catch two local spiritualists. When talking about the White Spear Society, the two clearly had strange expressions. So, even if they weren't from the White Spear Society, they definitely knew about it. A figure formed by black and white energy appeared behind Sam Mira. "I hate such barbaric behavior." Sam Mira was making her stand clear. If Chen Zhao continued to catch them, she'd attack. Suddenly Sam Mira's feet sank. Then, Sam Mira found that his legs were bound by some black and red substance. The dark lava kept spreading upward. Soon, Sam Mira was wrapped up like a dumpling and her mouth was sealed. Sam Mira wasn't weak. In fact, she was very strong. But she didn't take Chen Zhao seriously enough. More importantly, the difference in their abilities was too great. Chen Zhao rarely used the dark lava as his main attack method. It wasn't that the dark lava wasn't strong enough. It was just that he didn't need it. The greatest use of the dark lava was to deal with a large number of enemies. It could be used as a control method, or to strengthen one's body through dark assimilation. Miss Witch, I hope you can understand that I don't want to hurt you. But that doesn't mean I don't dare to. A sharp spike formed from dark magma was pointed at Sam Mira's forehead. If you can understand, then I'll let you go. If you don't, then I can only send you to the god you believe in. Sam Mira nodded, fear in her eyes. No one could face death without fear. Lowering one's head wasn't a sign of weakness. Sam Mira could tell that Chen Zhao was someone who often killed people. Chen Zhao let go of Sam Mira. Sam Mira didn't attack Chen Zhao after he let go. Instead, he turned and left. Chen Zhao glanced at Sam Mira. She was a smart woman. However, Chen Zhao's display of strength had worked. It was enough to scare Sabonis and Rashid. Chen Zhao turned to look at the two. I hope the rest of our conversation will go smoothly, okay? Dark magma spread beneath their feet. The two of them hurriedly nodded. Are you from the White Spear Society? Chen Zhao asked. No. We have nothing to do with the White Spear Gang. Sabonis and Rashid quickly shook their heads, horror written all over their faces. It felt as if they would die if they were members of the White Spear Association. Then are you from Satanism? The two of them shook their heads again. Their faces were filled with even more fear. However, it was different from before. Do you know where we can find people from the White Spear Association? Sabonis and Rashid shook their heads frantically. We don't know. We have nothing to do with the White Spear Association. Narrowing his eyes, Chen Zhao asked. Did something big happen in the spiritual world of New Orleans? Is it related to the White Spear Association and Satanism? Sabonis and Rashid exchanged glances. Sabonis asked tentatively, You really don't know? I don't know, Chen Zhao said honestly. You're not from Satanism? Although my trip to New Orleans this time is related to the White Spear Society and Satanism, I'm not a member of these two organizations. No matter what you say about these two organizations, I don't care. I just want to find them. Sabonis and Rashid secretly heaved a sigh of relief. However, they still didn't dare to believe Chen Zhao completely. Why do you want to find these two organizations? Actually, I want to find Satanism the most, but I heard that the White Spear Association and Satanism are mortal enemies, so I want to find Satanism through the White Spear Association. Of course, it would be best if you can directly provide me with information about Satanism. No one knows where the headquarters of the satanic cult is, and the White Spear Society that you're looking for has already been destroyed by the satanic cult. Just 2 weeks ago, more than 100 core members of the White Spear Society were all killed. After that, the satanic cult started hunting down the remaining members of the White Spear Society. All the spiritualists in New Orleans are in danger. The entire White Spear Association died? Chen Zhao frowned. Didn't I hear that the White Spear Association and Satanism are evenly matched? How did they suddenly get destroyed? Chen Zhao had heard from the handsome guy that the White Spear Association and Satanism had been enemies for more than 20 years. Logically speaking, Satanism shouldn't have the absolute power to destroy the White Spear Association. We don't know. We're just idle spiritualists. We don't know much about these two organizations. We've already told you everything we know. Please let us go. You said that Satanism is hunting the remaining members of the White Spear Association in New Orleans, right? Chen Zhao asked. We haven't seen them, but the news has been spreading in the spiritual world. You should have your own sources, right? Every spiritualist would definitely have companions that they would cross paths with in their local area. They were no exception. The two were unwilling to admit it, but they couldn't deny it. Then it's impossible that you don't know where Satanism is, Chen Zhao said. A large number of spiritualists were active in New Orleans. It was impossible that the local spiritualists didn't know. Recently, the police have been setting up checkpoints on all the main roads, Sabonis said. They say they're hunting fugitives to prevent them from escaping, but there haven't been any major cases in the city. Of course, the big explosion 2 nights ago doesn't count. Rashid added. The person who issued the order seems to be the director of the New Orleans Police Department. Is there a problem with the director? I'm not sure, Rashid said. Only then did Chen Zhao let go of the two. When they were about to leave, Chen Zhao said, Do you want to make money? You want us to help you find information about Satanism? Yes. Didn't you say that a large number of Satanism members are active in the city? Find one, and I'll give you $10,000. $10,000 was not a small amount. Most spiritualists weren't rich. Sabonis and Rashid weren't rich either. Chapter 1674. Sabonis and Rashid reluctantly agreed to the deal. It was risky, but they were still tempted. Even if it was only $10,000, it was a huge sum for them. At first, they'd heard Chen Zhao mention the White Spear Society. They'd thought that Chen Zhao was from Satanism, and thought that they were from the White Spear Society. That was why they'd been so terrified. After confirming that Chen Zhao wasn't from Satanism, they heaved a sigh of relief. However, they didn't dare to fool Chen Zhao. Night, Fan Gannon enjoyed the darkness. In the past, he'd always respected justice and followed fairness. He advocated justice and followed fairness. He'd almost lost his life. Then a demon came to him. He'd asked if he'd sold his soul to the demon. He didn't want to die. He was afraid of death. So he'd accepted the deal. He'd sold his soul to the demon. Of course, the demon had given him a second life. He'd been saved. Then his career kept rising. From an ordinary cop, he'd become the chief of the New Orleans Police Department in a short time. Whenever he had competitors, they'd create all sorts of scandals. Or they'd get some weird disease. He'd started to enjoy it. It was as if his past pursuits were ridiculous. 30 years had passed. He'd gotten old. But he was still full of energy. He was even stronger than 30 years ago. Just then, Fan Gannon heard heavy footsteps. Fan Gannon jumped up from his chair. At the same time, he found the gun in the drawer. He'd divorced long ago. He was the only one at home. There wouldn't be a second person. Who was it? Was it a thief? Fan Gannon looked at the door calmly. The footsteps got closer and closer. It suddenly stopped outside the door. Fan Gannon took a deep breath. As long as the person opened the door, he could shoot immediately. He had every reason and every right to shoot. But the door didn't open. It was completely silent outside. Suddenly, Fan Gannon felt something on his shoulder. A hand was on Fan Gannon's shoulder. Hello, Mr. Chief. Fan Gannon raised his arm and pointed the gun at the back of his shoulder. But before he could shoot, his hand and gun were crushed at the same time. Woo! Fan Gannon wanted to scream, but his mouth was covered. Shoo! Chen Zhao shushed them. Don't disturb the neighbor's sleep. If it was somewhere else, he wouldn't care if they shot him. But this was a residential area, and it was night time. The sound of a gunshot was very loud. Chen Zhao closed the curtains. The room instantly became pitch black. Who are you? Fan Gannon was pushed to the ground, and he looked at the figure in the dark in fear. Can you tell me how you contact Satanism? Chen Zhao asked. What's Satanism? It seems like you don't want to talk. It's okay, I will find a way to make you talk. Van Gannon soon gave in. It was true that he sold his soul to the devil. But he didn't have an iron will. Otherwise, he wouldn't have abandoned his faith in the face of death. However, to his disappointment, Fan Gannon could not provide him with any clues. Although he was working for the Church of Satan, but he didn't even know about the existence of Satanism. He simply thought that he had sold his soul to the devil. In reality, this was just a small trick of the Church of Satan. Even Chen Zhao could do better than the Church of Satan. Not to mention the devil. Chen Zhao could even disguise himself as an emperor. Chen Zhao didn't plan on letting the police chief off. The next day, Fan Gannon's body was found in his home. Chen Zhao had even left a bloody word, revenge. Since the White Spear Society was destroyed by the Church of Satan, then Chen Zhao would disguise himself as the White Spear Society and take revenge on the Church of Satan. Of course, as expected, the murder caused a stir in the entire city. Sabonis and Rashid had already seen the news. They glanced at each other but didn't speak. As expected, he had attacked Mr. Fan Gannon. And he had purposely made a big deal out of it. He probably wanted to attract the attention of the Church of Satan. Both of them felt that Chen Zhao's actions were too risky. After all, it was the Church of Satan. Chen Zhao was just one person. In their eyes, no matter how powerful a person was, he couldn't defeat the Church of Satan. Of course, they wouldn't try to persuade him. They had only met by chance. They weren't even friends. They could only say that they weren't enemies. Soon they received a piece of information. Mr. Chun, we found out something. Yeah, tell me about it. We found a place that seems to be a gathering place for the Church of Satan. But there seems to be a lot of people there. How many people? More than 20. Send me your bank account numbers. Portia, transfer $300,000 to this account. Portia was already used to Chen Zhao's wasteful spending. Chen Zhao had disappeared for the entire night. She didn't know where he went. Anyway, she felt that her boss was becoming more and more mysterious. Chen Zhao would never explain anything to her. Oh, call Sam and Vicari over. Sir, why did you call us? In the past 2 days, Chen Zhao didn't ask them to monitor the two places. They felt that they might soon return to the state of unemployment in the past. This disappointed them, but they also felt helpless. They knew that this day would come sooner or later. Here's $20,000. Chen Zhao tossed 2 stacks of cash on the table. You've been working for me these days. I'm not satisfied with the results, but I promise to pay you. Sir. I want to continue working for you. Sam and Vicari didn't take the $20,000. There's nothing you can help me with. Chen Zhao rejected their request directly. Take the $20,000 and find a proper job. I hope that I won't see you in prison the next time I come to New Orleans. $20,000 wasn't a lot, but it wasn't a small amount either. If they were really willing to turn over a new leaf, $20,000 was enough as capital. Of course, Chen Zhao had already done his best. He didn't have a deep relationship with them. Giving them a little bit of capital was only because they had helped him with something. Plus, Chen Zhao felt that they weren't bad people. Of course, just because they weren't bad didn't mean that they would turn over a new leaf. Perhaps they would come back and spend all the money and go on with their wayfaring. Sir, we won't disappoint you. I hope you can come to New Orleans again. Chapter 1675. In the evening, Sabonis and Rashid finally saw Chen Zhao. Mr. Chun, it's the building in front. It wasn't a suburb, but there was a rather rundown building here. Even if there was an unfinished building in this area, the city government probably wouldn't tolerate it. Either he would find someone to take over, or he would tear down the unfinished building and sell the land. Is everyone inside? Chen Zhao looked in the direction of the building from 1,000 meters away. Yes, they only move at night. They have a lot of people. Sabonis glanced at Chen Zhao. Mr. Chen, you came alone? Rashid also looked worried. Before Chen Zhao came, they'd already explained the situation in as much detail as possible. They hoped that Chen Zhao could be taken seriously. But Chen Zhao still came alone. They didn't think that Chen Zhao could do anything alone. Does he think he can defeat so many Satanists by himself? Those crazy and cruel evil spiritualists. Don't worry, Chen Zhao said calmly. I'm going in. Mr. Chen, you're really going in alone? Sabonis called. He really didn't want Chen Zhao to die. Chen Zhao stopped and turned to look at the two. You two accompany me? Mr. Chen, don't joke around. I think it's still early. How about we wait until it's dark? What a joke. If you're going to die, we're not going to die with you. No need. I'm in a hurry. Chen Zhao shrugged and walked into the building alone. Sabonis, are we still going to wait here? Rashid asked hesitantly. What else? I'm afraid that when the Satanists come out and see us, we'll be in trouble. Rashid's face was filled with fear. Wait a little longer. If that person doesn't come out in an hour, we'll leave. Maybe he's already dead inside. Rashid wasn't gloating. He also hoped that Chen Zhao wouldn't die inside. That way, they could continue to sell information and earn money. They even regretted giving the information to Chen Zhao so early. But even if they wanted to stay out of it, things might not go their way. A woman appeared behind them. She ambushed them without any warning. Rashid was attacked from behind and fell to the ground. His back was a bloody mess. Sabonis, be careful. Fortunately, Sabonis reacted quickly and released a spell in an instant. The woman quickly retreated. The woman's palms had sharp claws like those of a lizard, and the back of her hands was covered with a layer of scales. Rashid, how are you? Don't get scratched by her claws. Her claws are poisonous, Rashid said painfully. Miss, is there a misunderstanding between us? Sabonis looked at the woman warily. The woman licked the blood on her claws and looked at them coldly. Since you're here, it means that you know where this is. There's no misunderstanding between us. The woman was gradually transforming into a lizard man. His skin was covered with scales. A green tail grew out of her back. Rashid and Sabonis groaned in their hearts. They had long heard that the Satanists had some kind of magic that allowed them to transform into lizard men. Now they had finally confirmed the authenticity of this rumor. Debilitating poison mist. Sabonis immediately released a spell at the woman. The woman was agile and fast. With a push of her legs, she jumped several meters and climbed onto the wall of the building behind her. Like a gecko, she stuck to the wall. To her, there was no difference between being on the wall and the ground. Sabonis did not want to fight with the female lizard. Once the Satanists found out about their battle, they would never be able to leave. Right now, Sabonis and Rashid only hoped that Chunjiao could last longer. The female lizard did not attack immediately. She was waiting for the sky to turn dark. Nighttime was her home ground. The sun had already set. It won't be long before it gets dark. So she was not in a hurry. She only had to watch the two and not let them escape. Sabonis wanted to escape, but Rashid was heavily injured. Unless Sabonis left Rashid behind. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to leave. Suddenly, the female lizard stuck her tongue out at Rashid from a few meters away. Sabonis and Rashid did not expect the female lizard to shoot her tongue so far. Her tongue immediately curled around Rashid's calf. Rashid felt a great power. The female lizard was very strong. She was even stronger than enhancer spiritualists. Although Rashid was seriously injured at the moment, but it did not mean that he could not fight back at all. Rashid immediately turned himself into an ice man. The female lizard immediately retracted her tongue. Her tongue could not withstand such a low temperature either. She was not a real lizard, but she had turned herself from a mammal to a cold-blooded animal. The temperature affected her greatly. She realized that she might not be able to defeat Rashid and Sabonis alone. She had been calling for her companions, but humans could not hear it. It was a low-frequency sound, but after waiting for a long time, her companions did not come out. Damn it! What were they doing? Why were they not coming out? Or rather, they were already nearby, but they did not come out on purpose. Were they watching him embarrass himself? Sabonis did not dare to act rashly. He was not confident that he could defeat the female lizard. Rashid could only barely protect himself now. At this time, the sky had turned completely dark, and there were no street lights in this area. The female lizard suddenly disappeared from the wall. Sabonis and Rashid cursed inwardly. Although it was not completely dark now, the light had a great impact on their vision. Sabonis suddenly felt his feet being pulled heavily, and he lost his balance. The female lizard had wrapped her tongue around Sabonis's calf and quickly pulled him in front of her. Under such a pull, Sabonis could not release magic even if he wanted to. Suddenly, Sabonis felt the tongue on his calf loosening. Ah! Hearing the female lizard's cry, Sabonis finally saw where she was. Her claws gripped the ground tightly, as if something was pulling her from behind. Finally, her claws scratched the ground, and her body began to be pulled backward. Her claws drew sparks on the ground. Sabonis clearly saw where the female lizard was being pulled. What happened? 9 Heavens, Divine Emperor. Chapter 1676. Just as Sabonis and Rashid were dumbfounded, they saw a figure walk over from the front. When they saw clearly that it was Chunjiao, they were both confused. Chunjiao must have dragged the female lizard into the darkness, right? Mr. Chun, luckily you didn't act rashly. I think we should plan this carefully. Mr. Chun, it's a good thing you didn't act rashly. I think we should discuss this further. Sabonis secretly rejoiced that Chunjiao had chosen to retreat. He had also come out to save his life. Otherwise, he and Rashid would have to pay the price here. Do me a favor and spread the news of what's going on in the spiritual world of New Orleans. What? What's going on inside? Rashid and Sabonis were both confused. You can go in and take a look. When Chen Zhao walked past the two of them, the two covered their noses and took a step back. The stench on Chen Zhao was too strong. It was as if he had just soaked in a vat of fresh blood. The two couldn't help but exchange glances. They looked at the building before them. The building was silent, but it gave off an unsettling aura. Chen Zhao left, but the two were still hesitant. They couldn't go in, but they couldn't stay either. Should we go in and take a look? But it's a gathering place for Satanists. But what that person said? Impossible. How long has it been? At least half an hour? There are more than 20 Satanists inside. But there's still no movement inside. Do you want to go in and take a look? The two discussed for a while, and finally decided to go in and take a look. The first thing they saw was the corpse of the female lizard from before. Her head had been crushed. Her claws had left a scorch mark on the ground. The two didn't linger before the corpse, and continued walking inside. When they reached the entrance, they saw another headless corpse. It wasn't that the man hadn't come in. It was already over. When the two entered the building, the entire place was filled with a strong stench of blood. Broken walls were everywhere, and broken limbs were everywhere. Did that man kill all the Satanists here? The two of them walked up and down in a circle. They were finally sure that no one was left alive. There was a line of bright red words on the wall in front of the entrance. Revenge. Revenge? Could this man be from the White Spear Association? That's not right. He even asked me about the White Spear Association. Or perhaps he had an old grudge against Satanism. Originally, he came to New Orleans to cooperate with the White Spear Association. In the end, it was said that the White Spear Association was destroyed. So he decided to act alone. If that was the case, it made sense. However, this man was too scary. He single-handedly slaughtered so many Satanists. Fortunately, they didn't have any further conflict with Chen Zhao yesterday. What Chen Zhao was doing now was waiting for the heir to come to him. The Satanists did not know where their leader was. But the good news was that with Sabonis and Rashid's help, they had no way to escape. Word had spread that he was hunting down Satanists. Now, everyone in the supernatural world in New Orleans knew about this. Furthermore, the two of them provided a few more gathering points for the Satanists. Chen Zhao killed another dozen Satanists in a random manner. But the downside was that this matter had also caused quite a stir among ordinary people. After all, the police chief had been killed first. Then more people were brutally murdered. Chen Zhao didn't hide the scene, so the entire city was in a state of panic. Even the local gangs kept a low profile. They didn't want to be implicated. After all the police in the city were going crazy. They were searching for clues like crazy. Sabonis and Rashid had a good time these 2 days. They didn't have to take any risks. At least, they didn't have to face the Satanists. The only thing they had to do was find out where the Satanists were, and tell Chen Zhao. They didn't have to worry about anything else. Mr. Qian-sun, is our boat ready? Feline asked. Yes, we can leave tomorrow night. Qian-sun nodded. All transportation methods had been blocked by the Satanists. This meant that Feline and Kajar could only leave by water. Even if the Satanists wanted to block the sea, they couldn't. After all, there were many yacht ports here. Hundreds of yachts entered and left every day. No matter how powerful the Satanists were, they couldn't search every ship. Kajar sat at the side with a cold expression. She ignored Feline and Qian-sun's conversation. Ms. Kajar, you don't have to be like that. Speaking of which, something happened outside these 2 days. Maybe you'll be happy. What? Kajar asked, looking up. She really couldn't think of anything that could make her happy. Someone's been hunting the Satanists in New Orleans these 2 days. Huh? Feline and Kajar both looked at Qian Sr. What happened? I don't know the details. Qian-sun shook his head. There's a rumor in the circle that it might be the White Spear Society's retaliation and revenge. Anyway, at least 40 Satanists were killed in these 2 days. The scene was bloody. All of them left one line: revenge. Feline looked at Kajar in shock. The White Spear Society still has people left? Kajar fell silent. She knew the White Spear Society very well. After all, she'd grown up in the White Spear Society. How many people did the White Spear Society have? How much power did they have? She could guess 80 to 90% of it. Perhaps the White Spear Society hadn't all died. But it was no different from being destroyed. Even if there were only 2 or 3 kittens left, most of them would be hiding like he was doing now. How could they have the strength to fight back against the Satanists? Chin-sun, you're not lying to me, are you? Is there a need for me to? The entire spiritual world in New Orleans is frightened now. The culprit is extremely cruel. It's obvious that he has a deep grudge against the Satanists. I'm not leaving, Qajar suddenly said resolutely. I'm staying. Since someone has the courage to fight back against the Satanists, I won't be a coward. I'll take revenge on the Satanists too. Qajar, you're crazy. I'm not crazy, Qajar said firmly. If I continue to run away like this, it will drive me crazy, Kajal said resolutely. Qajar looked at Feline. Feline, go. I don't need you to care about me. I know what I'm doing. How do you want me to form a team? Feline sighed. Are you willing to stay and help me? Do I have any other choice? Feline felt that if he stayed, he could at least help Qajar at a critical moment. Feline looked at Qajar. But you have to promise me that you can't be impulsive. Chapter 1677. It was 300 kilometers west of New Orleans. It used to be a busy town. It had a population of thousands. But this town had been destroyed by a plague 30 years ago. None of the thousands of people survived. Not only that, the town had been completely sealed. No one could enter this town anymore. At least no one could enter through normal means. But now, this town had become the headquarters of the Satanists. In the center of the town was originally the town government. Now it had become the Satanists' demon church. Roy wore a black silk dress and knelt in front of a ferocious-looking demon statue praying. In comparison, Aimsha didn't have any respect for the demon statue. She didn't believe in Satan either. She didn't betray her white spear because of her sisterly relationship with Roy. All they did was make a deal. After a while Roy finished praying. She stood up and turned to look at Aimsha. Aimsha, are there any strong people in the White Spear Society? Strong people? Aimsha was stunned. No. To facilitate your plan, I gathered all the spiritualists who could pose a threat to you. Even if a few escaped, they're just rats. Today, I heard from my subordinates that someone has slaughtered my followers in New Orleans, and the culprit is very strong. Nearly 50 of the followers deployed in New Orleans have returned to Master's arms. The culprit's purpose is very clear, revenge. That's the word left near every sacrifice follower. That's impossible. Even if all the remaining rats come together, they won't be able to kill 50 of your subordinates. But that's the truth. Many of my children are dead or injured. Are you suspecting that I'm hiding the strength of the White Spear Society? That's a baseless suspicion. I have no reason to do so. It won't do me any good. That's why I'm curious too. Roy stared at her sister. Roy had always been wary of Aimsha, because in her eyes, her sister Aimsha was the true evil. She was a person with no faith. Whether it was in the past or now, she only pursued one thing. That was great power. She could betray the entire world for her own benefit without hesitation. Like this betrayal of the White Spear Society. She was the one who established the White Spear Society. And she didn't establish the White Spear Society to protect justice. It was just to create trouble for him. Roy believed that if someone offered her enough benefits, Aimsha would betray him without hesitation. That was why Royer was suspicious. His men were attacked in New Orleans. Could it be a Mesh's trick? You still doubt me. Shouldn't I doubt you? Fine, I think I need to prove myself. Aimsha shrugged. Give me the information you have, and I will solve the problem. By the way, if possible, bring them back alive, Roy said. All right, I'll try my best, but I can't guarantee anything. You can use my people as you please. Roy paused for a moment before continuing. Even if you can't bring them back alive, at least bring back their corpses. Even if he died, Roy had a way to make him speak. When the time came, he would know who he was dealing with, and whether it was a conspiracy of Aimsha. Aimsha knew that his sister was suspicious of him, but no matter how suspicious she was, in the end she could not leave him. Aimsha was also curious. Who were the people causing trouble in New Orleans? Were they really from the White Spear Society? There didn't seem to be such people in the White Spear Society anymore. The corpses of his former subordinates were all sent here. He had identified them too. Aimsha had a pretty good idea of who was left. If it was someone who could pose a threat to her, Aimsha would definitely not let them go. Boss, when are we going back to Los Angeles? Not sure. Chen Zhao replied nonchalantly. Why? Is there something urgent? Boss, didn't you see the news? Recently, a murderer appeared in New Orleans. He's killing people everywhere. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. You definitely don't know that the murderer is right in front of you. As long as you don't leave the hotel casually, Chen Zhao said calmly. The murderer won't come to the hotel to kill people. Not necessarily. He's definitely a lunatic. Since he's a lunatic, who knows if he'll come to the hotel to kill people? How do you know it's a madman? I saw it on the news. Every murder scene has the word revenge written on it. This means that the other party didn't kill people randomly, but took revenge with a purpose. It might be a gang dispute. Anyway, it has nothing to do with us. Why do you care so much? Portia did not think so. Gang vendetta? After all, she had grown up in New Orleans. She knew what the local gangs were like. Even the most arrogant gang would not dare to kill people so recklessly. It was like they were challenging the police, or even the government. Only a crazy person would dare to do such a thing. Anyway, she did not want to stay here. A few days ago, there was an earth-shattering explosion on the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge. The man-made island on Lake Pontchartrain had become history. When she had money, she would bring her family to Los Angeles. She definitely could not stay in this chaotic city. Just then Chen Zhao's phone rang. Portia immediately went over and picked it up. Hello, I'm Mr. Chen's assistant. May I know who you are? I'm looking for Mr. Chen. Boss, it's for you. Chen took the phone. Who is it? Mr. Chen, it's me, Sabonis. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Chen, there's news that a motorcade entered New Orleans. Someone recognized one of them as Aimsha, the former leader of the White Spear Gang. Chen covered the phone and said to Portia, Go out first. Remember to close the door. After Portia left the room, Chen asked, Didn't you say that the White Spear Gang was destroyed? The president of White Spear Society is still alive. I don't know the situation. Do you know where they're staying? They're staying in the French district. There's a lot of them, around 100. Got it. Send me their exact location. Soon, Chen Zhao received the address from Sabonis. Chen called Portia in. Portia, transfer 1 million to the account from yesterday. Okay, boss. For the past 2 days, Portia had been transferring money to the account Chen provided intermittently. Sometimes it was tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands. Chapter 1678. Kajar and Feline stopped in front of a manor. Just as Kajar was about to rush in, Feline pulled her back. Kajar, you're too rash. Feline, let go. You haven't recovered from your injuries, and we've received news that there are quite a few Satanists here, Feline advised. I know what I'm doing, Kajar said coldly. Kajar. Feline didn't let go. But at that moment, Kajar suddenly pushed Feline. Feline felt a terrifying force hit him in the face. Feline's entire body was sent flying. Although Feline flew a few meters away, he wasn't injured. However, his face was filled with disbelief. Kajar, what's going on? Where did you get such powerful magic? I told you, I know what I'm doing. After saying that, Kajar's body suddenly turned into a black fog and disappeared into the manor in front of them. At the periphery of the manor, Kajar saw a lizard monster. The black fog that Kajar had turned into was especially well hidden in the darkness. Even when the black fog spread to the back of the lizard monster, he didn't notice it. Kajar suddenly stretched out her hands from the black fog and heavily slapped the lizard monster's back. The lizard monster didn't even have time to make a sound before its body instantly exploded. Kajar. Kajar turned around and saw that Feline had followed her in. What are you doing here? I'm worried, Feline said. I can handle it myself. I don't need you. Kajar had an unapproachable expression on her face. Shoo. Feline suddenly pulled Kajar down. There are a few hidden sentries here. If you go out, you'll be discovered, Feline said in a low voice. Kajar froze for a moment before carefully observing. Detection wasn't her strong point, But Feline could switch magic systems. So Kajar still believed Feline's words. I'll use Vanish to help you hide. Vanish was a type of concealment magic. It could be considered a type of support magic. Its effect was to completely conceal a person. Of course, concealment was a magic concealment. In fact, it could still be seen with the naked eye. It was similar to modern stealth fighters. The stealth fighter was just shielding itself from radar scanning. It could still be seen with the naked eye. This concealment spell worked the same way. It could block the perception of magic, but it could be seen by the naked eye. Although it looked weak, it was actually very powerful. This was because many spiritualists were used to using magic to sense things. Especially now that it was still night time. Whether it was the enemy or themselves, their vision was affected to a certain extent. The lizard men also had night vision and thermal sensing, which was also included in the category of magic perception. Therefore, Feline's concealment spell could come in handy here. Feline also cast a concealment spell on himself. Just then, a truck horn sounded from outside the manor. Papa, that voice was very loud and clear. Then Feline and Kajal saw an oil truck rush into the manor's gate. The iron gate was sent flying by the oil truck. Both Kajar and Feline were astonished. The two of them looked at each other in confusion. Just like that, the oil truck swaggered in. Along the way, two Satanists with human appearances were directly crushed by the tanker. However, at this time, more Satanists rushed out of the mansion. The truck didn't care about anything else and ran over the Satanists. The Satanists were prepared and quickly dodged. This time, the crushing didn't work. They immediately turned into lizard men. Then, they jumped onto the front of the truck, wanting to attack the driver. The truck crashed into the front gate of the mansion. Boom! Just then the oil tank pulled by the truck suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, dozens of lizard men were engulfed in flames. Kajal's eyes lit up as she watched. This was a really good move. Why didn't she think of this? Right now the manor was in chaos. The impact of the explosion caused half of the mansion to collapse. Feline furrowed his brows. To be honest, if she was involved in that kind of explosion, she probably wouldn't be able to escape either. Just then, a person walked out of the blazing flames. Chen Zhao walked out of the flames. A lizard man completely ignited by oil pounced at Chen Zhao crazily. Then Chen Zhao kicked it away. Chen Zhao was quite satisfied with this ambush. The oil truck killed a large number of lizard men. Just then, the shadow eye on Chen Zhao's arm opened. Strangely, Chen Zhao didn't realize that someone was watching him. Strange, just then a large number of lizard men charged out of the mansion. Feline saw the person clearly. It's him. Feline, do you know him? He stayed at Hilda Hotel before too. He asked me about the White Spear Society. Who is he? I don't know. I only know that he's an enhancer. He has pretty good defense and strength. Feline had a deep impression of Chen Zhao's punch. He can ignore that explosion. His defense isn't just strong, Kajal said. Let's go help. Wait. Let's see. Feline felt that they should be more cautious. What are we waiting for? Since he's an enemy of the Satanists, he's our comrade, Kajal said as she charged out. As soon as Kajal appeared, two lizard men charged at her. Explode! Kajal growled. A shockwave erupted from Kajal's body, instantly killing the two lizard monsters. Chen Zhao turned to look at Kajal. What a powerful magic power. This kind of magic power is almost comparable to Hallie's in Norma's. Who are you? Chen Zhao asked, confused. You're an enemy of the Satanists? Sort of, Chen Zhao said. Then we're friends, Kajal said. Kajal, my little baby, are you okay? Aimsha walked out of the mansion. Even though the entire mansion had turned into a sea of fire, Aimsha was still calm. Chen Zhao also looked at Aimsha. The woman's magic was also very powerful. It was even larger than Kajal's. She probably wasn't a regular Satanist. With such powerful magic, could she be the leader of the Satanists? Aimsha looked at Kajal in astonishment. Little darling, you actually sacrificed your life in exchange for powerful magic power. I'm going to kill you. When Aimsha appeared in front of Kajal, Kajal instantly lost control and charged at Aimsha like a madwoman. Aimsha pointed at Kajal with her right hand and drew a strange rune in the air with 2 fingers. Freeze. Chapter 1679. Kajar's body stopped moving. It was as if the scene had been frozen. Chen Zhao was shocked. This spell was similar to West's slow field. At least the effect was similar. Traitor, let go of me. If you have any dignity left, fight me fairly. Kajol roared furiously. Fair fight? I'm not interested. Aimsha said disapprovingly. Besides, I'm your adoptive mother. Don't you think it's a little disrespectful to talk to me like that? I'd rather die in an orphanage than be adopted by a demon like you. Kajar roared. Guys, did you forget about me? Chen Zhao interrupted their argument. Can you tell me who you are? Aimsha looked at Chen Zhao. Fine, sir. Who are you? Are you from the Satanists? Chen Zhao asked. Looks like you have a grudge against them, Aimsha said coolly. Aimsha didn't waste any time. She cast the same spell at Chen Zhao. Freeze. Chen Zhao didn't move. He just stood there. This woman's spell was the same as West's slow field. If one's magical power or energy was too much, they wouldn't be able to affect the other. Chen Zhao had tried West's slow field. It was this feeling. There was a moment of pause. Then he directly broke through this pause. You're the one who caused trouble in the city and killed many Satanists, right? Would you believe me if I said no? Chen Zhao chuckled. Just then, the lizard monsters surrounded them. They scratched Chen Zhao's body. But Chen Zhao wasn't hurt at all. Lady, my clothes are branded. They're very expensive. Are you an enhancer? Aimsha looked at Chen Zhao. The lizard monster's claws didn't hurt him at all. Obviously. Do you think I can't do anything to you? You can try. Chen Zhao chuckled. A white spear condensed in Amesha's hand, and she threw it at Chen Zhao. But the moment the spear stabbed into Chen Zhao's chest, it shattered like glass. Very strong defense. No wonder you can kill so many Satanists. Aimsha waved her hand. Tie him up. The lizard monster took out a chain and tied Chen Zhao up. Where do you want to take me? To reclaim the sea? You'll know soon enough. Aimsha didn't want to talk to Chen Zhao anymore. She turned to Kajol. Baby, I actually love you. Do you believe me? The more affectionate Aimsha was, the angrier Kajol became. However, Aimsha didn't seem to notice Kajol's angry gaze. Her fingertips caressed Kajol's youthful cheeks. What a pity, this young body. Aimsha sighed. After that, Aimsha ordered the lizard monster to tie Kajar up. I've seen some old witches before, Chen Zhao said, watching from the side. They're just like you. Aimsha wasn't angry at his words. She glanced at him casually. You'll die faster if you talk too much. Fine. Chen Zhao shrugged nonchalantly. I'll try to speak less in the future. Huh. I hope you still have a future. With a wave of her hand, Aimsha carried Chen Zhao and Cargill into the cargo compartment of a large truck. Aimsha also entered the truck and closed the door. The entire truck fell into darkness. Madam, where are you sending us? You'll know soon enough, Aimsha said coolly, hiding in the darkness. Can't you tell me in advance? That way, I can be prepared. The headquarters of the Satanism, Aimsha said. Really? Then I can see the leader of the Satanism, right? Pfft. Aren't you scared? What do you think will happen if you go to the Satanism now? At worst, I'll just be a living sacrifice, Chen Zhao said unconcerned. Aren't you scared at all? For normal people, death was the most terrifying thing. But for spiritualists, death wasn't the end. What truly made people feel despair was a living sacrifice. Sacrificing flesh and soul to some creature. Everything would become someone else's fun. Bien. Some were even worse than bien. Some were worse than bien. Erasing some traces of existence. This was the result that spiritualists feared the most. Chen Zhao yawned. I'm a bit sleepy. Wake me up when we get there. Both Kajar and Aimsha were dumbfounded by Chen Zhao's attitude. They couldn't feel any fear from Chen Zhao at all. Not at all. Just then, there was a thud at the top of the truck. It sounded like something had landed on the top of the truck. Chen Zhao opened his eyes. He didn't expect it to be Feline. Why was she here? A while later, the truck was opened. Feline was here to save Kajar. Feline, go. It's a trap. Kajar yelled. What? Feline couldn't react in time. Aimsha had already moved. Freeze. Feline was also frozen. Feline, I didn't expect you to come to New Orleans. Did Kajar call you here? Aimsha knew Feline too. Pfft. You're so weak and you're trying to save people. Chen Zhao said sarcastically. Kajar and Feline both glared at Chen Zhao. By the way, Feline, where have you been these days? Why did you leave without saying anything? Portia's been sad for a long time. Feline didn't want to hear Chen Zhao's voice. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao clearly didn't have that awareness. If I knew you had a grudge against Satanism, we should have worked together. Feline didn't have a grudge against Satanism. Oh, I'm hungry. Ms. Aimsha, do you have food? No. Aimsha replied indifferently. Do you know that a hungry offering will affect the taste of the summoned or contracted target? It'll affect the target's mood, and even the success of the sacrifice? Do you want to add some pepper and salt? Aimsha sneered. That depends on what the contracted target likes, but most of them prefer lighter flavors. The three people in the container were all speechless. Do you think that you'll be fine even if you're caught, because of your amazing defense? Ah, you guessed it. I do think so. Idiot. Feline snorted coldly. After driving for a few hours, the truck finally stopped. Are we at our stop? The container was opened, and a strong aura of hell rushed out. Welcome to hell. Aimsha walked out of the truck first. The three were brought out of the truck. It was snowing. It was snowing black here. The entire town was shrouded in darkness. There were Satanists in the form of lizard monsters everywhere. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 1680. Just then an honor guard came over. 4 lizard men carried a metal palanquin. Roy was sitting on it. There were also people raising flags in front and behind them. The patterns on those flags were cryptic and strange. When they reached the crowd, the metal palanquin was lowered. With the help of the lizard men, Roy stood up in a charming manner and strolled over. Crack! Suddenly, Chen Zhao heard something crack. He turned to look at Kajar. The chains on her were shattering. Very powerful. Kajar's magic increased again. Right now, she was above Amesh's magic. She had broken the restraining spell Aimsha had put on her. 2 streaks of bloody tears appeared on Kajar's face. Aimsha raised an eyebrow, also surprised. But she didn't attack. Instead, she took a step back. Ah! Kajar spread her arms and completely broke free. Kajar's hatred for Aimsha and Roy was greater than anything else. Right now, Kajar's hair was fluttering. A cyclone surrounded her and her clothes whistled. Feline stared at Kajar in disbelief. Where did she get such a powerful magic power? Kajar raised her arm and aimed her palm at Roy. A terrifying force shot out from her palm. Roy didn't move at all. A magic rune appeared before her. Bang! The force from Kajar's palm shattered the magic rune before Roy. Roy's gaze was indifferent. There were still dozens of magic runes surrounding her. Feline's face was full of disbelief. Was this the leader of the Satanism? She was so powerful. Kajar had released such a terrifying magic attack, but she wasn't affected at all. Roy raised his finger and pointed at Kajal. 2 magic runes flew towards her. The runes landed on Kajar's body and immediately turned into black chains, wrapping around her. Kajal bellowed and snarled. The black chains on her body creaked. Still not enough. Roy was surprised. Another magic rune flew towards Kajal. This time, however, the rune took the form of a looming demon. The demon hugged Kajar from behind, and then its figure gradually faded. Kajar's struggles became much weaker. No matter how hard she struggled, she could not break free from this restraint. Fu Lin was already dumbfounded by what he saw. Was this the strength of a top-notch spiritualist? Roy walked in front of Kajal and placed his palm on her forehead. Lost child, I will now give you a chance to return to the right path. Pledge your loyalty to my lord, and my lord will erase your hatred and grant you peace. The ruthlessness and madness on Kajal's body gradually subsided, and her gaze became peaceful. What a powerful hypnosis. Come give me one too. Chen Zhao suddenly called out. Kajal perked up and woke up from her daze again. Roy frowned and turned to look at Chen Zhao. Who are you? You are not a member of the White Spear Association. I'm from Los Angeles. Do you want peace? Roy walked up to him. Yes, I want to. Chen Zhao nodded. Roy raised his hand and pressed it against Chen Zhao's forehead. Those who are lost. Suddenly, Chen Zhao raised his head and bit Roy's palm. Ah! Roy screamed. Let go. Crack. Chen Zhao tore off a piece of flesh from Roy's palm. Everyone was astonished. Roy hugged his right palm and retreated a few steps, pain on his face. Chen Zhao spat out the flesh. Pfft. It's really sour. Aimsha also revealed a look of surprise. Just then, Chen Zhao broke free from the chains on him. Finally, I don't have to pretend anymore. Leader of Satanism. Do you know that I've been looking for you for a long time? Chen Zhao moved his limbs. Aimsha. Roy yelled. Aimsha didn't want to attack. But she had to do it now. Holy spear. Aimsha spread her arms, and a white magic circle appeared behind her. A white spear appeared in the center of each array. The white spear seemed to be real, and emitted a white metallic texture. Freeze. Aimsha used the same trick and froze Chen Zhao. The spell was instantly broken, but Chen Zhao didn't dodge. He tilted his head and looked at Aimsha. Is this the Chinese freeze spell? Chen Zhao hadn't come into contact with it before. But in the Qingyi sect's records, there were some special features of the spell. So Chen Zhao naturally thought of it. Go. Aimsha didn't answer his question. Dozens of white spears shot at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reached out and grabbed a white spear, allowing the others to land on him. These scattered attacks were useless against him. If Aimsha could gather all her magic, she could give him the power to attack. Only then could she break his defense. The white spears that landed on Chen Zhao all dissipated the moment they touched him. The constitution of no attribute worked again. If it was a pure physical attack, it was more likely to hurt Chen Zhao. But magic attacks couldn't reach the threshold of the constitution of no attribute. To Chen Zhao it was like a breeze. Chen Zhao squeezed the white spear in his hand lightly, and it disintegrated. Holy light bind. Dozens of white chains extended from the darkness. Each chain wrapped around Chen Zhao's body. In the blink of an eye, he was tied up like a dumpling. Chen Zhao was confused. The white chains were also made of magic. But why didn't they dissipate? Was it because the spell wasn't offensive? Chen Zhao raised his arms, and the countless white chains were shattered into pieces. Feline stared at Chen Zhao in disbelief. How was this possible? How could this guy be so strong? Last time he'd observed his magic. It was only the size of a finger, not even 1/10 of his size. How could he be so strong? Remember what I said just now? You can't even hurt me. How can you kill me? Feline and Kajar both thought that Chen Zhao was too arrogant. This was the headquarters of the Church of Satan. Was it really okay to be so arrogant here? As expected, what they were most worried about finally happened. Large numbers of lizard monsters appeared in all directions. They were so dense that not even a drop of water could pass through. Among the lizard monsters, there were also a few huge lizard-like monsters. These lizard monsters were all more than 10 meters long. If a person with trypophobia was in that situation, they would definitely pass out from fear. Feline and Kajar felt their scalps go numb. How could they fight? They couldn't win at all. Chapter 1681. No matter how crazy Kajar was, facing the thousands of soldiers and horses in front of them, they also felt a sense of suffocation. Feline was even more shocked. She was also stunned by the dense horde of monsters. Just how many lizards and giant lizards were there? 1,000? 10,000? This number probably wasn't enough to explain the number of monsters. There was no hope. This was simply an unfair war. Madam, you don't think you can escape by hiding behind these trash, right? Roy looked at Chen Zhao across the hundreds of lizards. Talk after you get past them. Fine. Maybe you need me to help you see reality. The war erupted instantly. Chen Zhao had already charged into the encirclement of the lizards. In an instant, a rain of blood and a foul wind blew. In the blink of an eye, Chen Zhao tore 3 or 4 lizards apart. Feline's eyes widened. Only now did she realize that Chen Zhao was stronger than she'd imagined. However, even though Feline's impression of Chen Zhao had changed, it still wouldn't change her worries. To her, no matter how strong Chen Zhao was, he couldn't change the current situation. How many could he kill? 10? 100? 1,000? It was meaningless. There were simply too many enemies. When the numbers reached a certain level, there would be a qualitative change. Chen Zhao didn't use mass destruction tactics. If he used Imperial Thousand Swords, no matter how many lizards there were, they wouldn't be enough for him to kill. These lizards were probably all the Satanists had. If he killed them all, the Satanists would probably feel heartache too. Anyway, the Satanists' leader was right under his nose. She couldn't escape, but Chen Zhao was curious about the black snow. Where did this black snow come from? Also, who caused the black snow? Roy had been observing Chen Zhao from behind the lizards. Seeing an opportunity, Roy attacked. 10 magic runes around her suddenly shot out, heading straight for Chen Zhao. The moment the magic runes reached Chen Zhao, they suddenly turned into 10 indistinct demons. The 10 demons hugged Chen Zhao, just like how they dealt with Kajar earlier. However, Kajar had only been 1. Now there were 10. Chen Zhao felt his body freeze, but the next moment his power exploded. Clang clang. A clear cracking sound came from Chen Zhao's body. Roy's head hurt, and he almost lost his balance. What was wrong with this guy? 10 Devil's Embrace were instantly destroyed by him? Roy hesitated for a moment. The pain from the hole in her palm kept reminding her. Roy looked at the 20 magic runes hovering around him. After a slight hesitation, Roy finally made up his mind. More than 20 magic runes gathered together, forming a terrifying claw that swiped at Chen Zhao. Satan's claw. When Kajar and Feline saw the giant claw that appeared out of thin air, they couldn't help but gasp. That terrifying giant claw brought them a great sense of oppression. Just then, Chen Zhao swung his fist upward. A fist shadow broke through the air and collided head-on with Satan's claw. Bang! The shockwave spread in all directions. Hundreds of lizard monsters nearby were knocked down. Satan's claw and Chen Zhao's fist disappeared at the same time. Feline and Kajel were dumbfounded. How terrifying! Whether it was Royer or Chen Zhao, all of this had given them a huge shock. The lizard monsters around Chen Zhao all collapsed. But soon enough, more lizard monsters surrounded them. A giant lizard broke through the crowd and charged at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao held the lizard's mouth with both arms and tore. The lizard's upper and lower jaws were torn open. Feline and Kajel couldn't help but exclaim. The scene was too shocking. Even Kajel didn't dare to say that she could kill such a giant lizard instantly. Chen Zhao pulled off a broken claw from his shoulder and tossed it away. A strong smell of blood permeated the air. Just then, the lizard monster suddenly retreated. What? You admit defeat? I haven't had enough yet. To the others, Chen Zhao's words sounded too arrogant. How many lizard monsters did you kill? Do you really think you've won? Just then, 10 giants appeared from the back. They were more than 10 meters tall. They moved slowly, taking a few seconds with each step. Their eyes were dull, as if they had no consciousness. Each of the giants was dragging a giant sword that was even larger than their bodies. Suddenly, one of the giants sped up. It reached Chen Zhao in an instant and swung the huge sword down. Chen Zhao dodged the slash. But the giant froze again, as if it was frozen. It didn't move at all. Just then another giant charged over. It was also as fast as lightning when it attacked. After the attack, it froze on the spot while maintaining its posture. Chen Zhao was just about to attack the frozen giant, when the first giant moved again. This attack was out of Chen Zhao's expectations. He couldn't defend in time. The huge sword landed on Chen Zhao's body. It didn't break his defense, but it sent him flying in the air. Feline and Kajel's hearts tightened. Chen Zhao wouldn't die, right? Chen Zhao just lay there. Just then, another giant leaped high into the air and stabbed its sword down at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao put his palms together and blocked the huge sword. Chen Zhao increased his strength again, turning the tables and snatching the sword from the giant's hand. The giant was also flung away by Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao stood up again. Just then another giant charged over. Chen Zhao had more or less figured out what was going on with these giants. They were probably some kind of puppet. They weren't alive. Before they attacked, they would either slow down or just stop. But once they attacked, they were extremely sharp. Chen Zhao held the huge sword with both arms and swung it horizontally. The giant and the sword were cut in half. The giant's body crashed down. Feline and Kajel were dumbfounded, their faces filled with disbelief. Feline felt that his provocation toward Chen Zhao that day was so laughable. Chen Zhao looked at the huge sword in his hand and stabbed it into the hilt. This way, he didn't need to hold the sword with both arms. Chen Zhao tried swinging the sword. Not bad. Apart from being a bit lighter, it didn't feel bad. Chen Zhao looked at the other 8 giants. Suddenly Chen Zhao's eyes widened. He and his sword had disappeared. In less than a second, the 8 giants were split open at the same time. Everything happened in an instant. Everything ended in an instant. Both Feline and Kajal were shocked. Was that guy even human? Very good. I grant you the right to submit to me, a sudden voice said. God Emperor of the 9 heavens. Chapter 1682. Chen Zhao looked up and realized that it was a girl. The girl's hair was so long that it dragged on the ground. She was barefoot, and half of her face was a bloody mess. The other half was very beautiful. Roy stood behind the girl, as if she was his master. The girl's skin was as clear as snow. She was wrapped in a thin white gauze, but her eyes were green. She wasn't tall, but she gave off a suffocating aura. However, his body was emitting a suffocating aura. The air seemed to freeze. Then let's see if you have the right to make me submit. Chen Zhao raised his huge sword and slashed at the girl. Chen Zhao wouldn't believe her just because of her appearance. The girl was just a vessel. Her soul was that of a demon lord. She wasn't a demon lord like Beelzebub who ruled over a small village. Whether in the human world or hell, she was a powerful demon. Wrong answer. The girl pointed at Chen Zhao with a slender finger. A beam of red light shot through the air. The blade of Chen Zhao's huge sword was instantly pierced. Then his chest was pierced too. The girl tilted her head and looked at him. You're not dead. With that, she waved her hand. Instantly, a terrifying chasm was left on the ground. The chasm was hundreds of meters long and dozens of meters wide. The rocks in the chasm had almost melted. Smoke rose from both sides. Feline and Kajar were both shocked. Who was this girl? They'd thought that Chen Zhao was already strong enough. But before this girl, Chen Zhao couldn't even block one attack. He couldn't even block one attack. He'd been evaporated by the girl. Supreme Lucifer, your greatness is as dazzling as the morning star. Roy knelt beside the girl sincerely. The girl looked at Roy and tapped his forehead lightly with her finger. Instantly, Roy felt that his injuries had completely healed. The mana he'd used was also completely recovered. He was even 10 times stronger than before. The magic runes he'd used earlier appeared again. There were now more than 60 magic runes circling around his body. Feline and Kajar stared at the girl in disbelief. Lucifer? Could this girl be the legendary Great Demon King? Ha! Lucifer? Suddenly a voice sounded. Everyone looked for the source of the voice. Chen Zhao walked out of the darkness. He didn't die? Feline was surprised. Kajal was equally shocked. Avatar 10,000 techniques returned to 1, Dark Assimilation, Mighty Miracle God. Chen Zhao turned into a 5-meter-tall giant. You didn't die? The girl was also puzzled. Was there anyone in the world who could block his attack? You're not bad. I can give you another chance now. Serve me, the young lady said. Chen Zhao grinned. I'll say the same thing. Let me see if you have the right to make me submit. The girl pointed at him. Wrong answer. But Chen Zhao stepped forward and held the girl's hand. Kacha, the girl's palm and arm were instantly crushed. The girl's expression changed. She pulled out her deformed arm and retreated. Chen Zhao looked at the rotten flesh on his palm. Your body is really fragile. Chen Zhao flipped his palm over. The girl's arm grew back, and her expression became solemn. How dare you? Roy jumped out impatiently. Chen Zhao didn't care if she was bold or not. He threw a punch. After turning magic into immortal power, Chen Zhao hadn't used his full strength yet. Even when facing Amanda Didier, he didn't use his full strength. This time, Chen Zhao used his full strength. The punch was like a mountain crashing down. Roy felt a suffocating pressure approaching. All the magic runes around him gathered to form a black wall. But the next moment the punch disintegrated it. The black wall shattered like a fragile glass mirror. Roy's mind went blank. It's over. Roy's body exploded instantly. The fist shadow swept past like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The girl felt a trace of danger. She couldn't block it. She had to dodge it. The girl moved and dodged Chen Zhao's punch. But just as she dodged, Chen Zhao was already waiting for her in the direction she dodged. Antanabia. Chen Zhao looked down at the girl. The girl's expression changed again. You. How do you know my name? Not only do I know your name, but I also know that you betrayed Satan, and your soul escaped to the human world. Chen Zhao looked at the girl. No, it should be the demon Antanabia. If your physical body and soul fused into one, you might be able to fight me. But right now you're just a soul. Coupled with this mortal's physical body, how much power can you unleash? 1/5. Or a quarter? Chen Zhao smiled at Antanabia. Antanabia wasn't weak. He could still hurt Chen Zhao. But he couldn't use his full power. If he exceeded the threshold, his current body would collapse. His soul could only obediently go back to hell. That would be his ultimate nightmare. Because when his soul left his body and came to the human world, he'd already been discovered by his master, Satan. If he returned to hell, he'd have to face Satan's fury. If he returned to hell, he'd have to face Satan's wrath. Who are you? How do you know my secret? Antanabia was actually a little scared. It wasn't because of the power Chen Zhao had displayed. It was because Chen Zhao actually knew his secret. You can ask your master, Satan, Chen Zhao said with a smile. If it's him, he might answer your question. Anta's expression was serious. Do you think you'll definitely win? Antanabia was prepared to make one last attempt. He opened his huge mouth and sucked in huge mouthfuls of air. The lizard men around him started to wilt, followed by their souls. Actually, even though he'd come to the human world as a soul, it was still very difficult. This was because his soul also had power that exceeded the limit. So he thought of a solution. He scattered half of his soul and distributed it to his believers. This way, his believers would become stronger. This also prevented him from being sent back to hell by the rules. And when he needed to, he could retrieve his soul at any time. Right now he needed these soul fragments. However, when he took back his soul fragment, it was not just his own soul fragment. He also absorbed the souls of his believers. Antanabia's power continued to grow. On the other hand, the lizard monsters were collapsing in droves. Countless souls mixed with Antanabia's soul fragments and merged with him. Chapter 1683. Aimsha was in even more pain. She'd also benefited from Antanabia's soul fragment. Moreover, the soul fragment she'd received was much larger than normal believers. This was the deal between her and Royer. She'd betrayed the White Spear Society and obtained great power. This was power that she'd never obtained in her entire life. But now the true price had appeared. Her deal partner had broken his promise. The power that should have belonged to her was being forcefully taken back. No. This is mine. However, she clearly didn't have the power to fight against Antanabia. Moreover, the power and soul fragment had originally belonged to Antanabia. Aimsha resisted with all her might. But all of this was useless. Even half of her soul had been pulled out of her body. Her soul was resisting too. Damn guy, hurry up and kill that demon. Hurry up and kill him, or we'll all die. Aimsha could only vent her anger on Chen Zhao. Hurry up and stop him from devouring. He'll become stronger and stronger. Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at Aimsha. His figure flashed and he appeared before Aimsha. I almost forgot about you. Chen Zhao lifted his leg. You, what are you doing? Aimsha didn't expect her words to make Chen Zhao target her. Chen Zhao's foot stomped down, and Aimsha was crushed into meat paste. Then, Amesh's soul was pulled toward Antanabia. Seeing Amesh's final outcome, Kadia didn't know what to think. Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at Antanabia. At this moment, his fleshly body was already distorted. This body had gone through many magical processes, but there was still a huge gap between it and his original body. If it was only half of his soul, he could barely handle it. But now, Antanabia had exceeded this limit. Gradually, Antanabia turned into a demon of the same size as Chen Zhao. Antanabia wasn't unfamiliar with his own power. But this body was about to collapse. He needed a new body. And that was Chen Zhao's body. If he won, everything would be fine. Chen Zhao's body could completely contain his entire soul and power. But if he lost, it would be a complete tragedy for him. No, that was a fate even more tragic than a tragedy. Without wasting any words, he made his move. Antanabia lunged at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao punched from above. Rumble. The ground cracked, and the ground spread out in all directions like waves. The surrounding buildings collapsed instantly, as if they had encountered a strong earthquake. For Qajar and Feline, this kind of terrifying destructive power was unimaginable. The battle between Chen Zhao and Antanabia completely overturned their understanding of the word battle. Kajar and Feline felt as if they were facing a monstrous wave. Every impact was beyond imagination. Is that all you have? Chunjiao punched Antaz's head. Several souls spilled out of his body. Antanabia did not hold back either. His counterattack swiped at Chunjiao's chest. A bloody mark was left on Chunjiao's chest. The wound on Chunjiao's chest healed instantly. Right now, Chunjiao's power wasn't the only thing that had reached its peak. Even his regenerative ability had reached an astonishing level. Of course, Antanabia was no worse than Chunjiao. Chunjiao grabbed Antaz's cheek. Demon Cannon. Energy mixed with angelic crystal burst out of Chunjiao's palm. The angelic crystal energy poured into Antaz's body. Antanabia felt like his insides were about to be burned. Cough cough. Holy power was unparalleled against demons. Even a great lord wouldn't dare to stuff angelic crystal into his mouth. Back then, Chunjiao had used this move to kill a great lord. Antanabia vomited large amounts of black blood. Chunjiao lifted Antaz up. At the same time, he stuffed a perfect angelic crystal into his mouth. Then, Chunjiao hooked Antaz's chin accurately. The perfect angelic crystal shattered in Antaz's mouth. Antaz felt the angelic crystal powder flow through his veins and through his entire body. White light started shining under his skin. The pain was unimaginable. Boom, boom, boom. Every time Chunjiao smashed into Antanabia, the ground would shake. Antanabia knew that he was in a hopeless situation. He had to take out his trump card. Antanabia took out a transparent container. Just then, Chunjiao grabbed Antaz's wrist. Crack, his wrist was broken. Then Chunjiao snatched the container from his hand. Give it back. Chunjiao kicked Antanabia away. Satan's blood. Chunjiao looked at the star-like light spots in the container. This wasn't his first time seeing Satan's blood. But Chunjiao hadn't killed him yet. It was because of Satan's blood. Chunjiao needed Antanabia to take out Satan's blood. Putting away Satan's blood, Chunjiao turned to Antanabia. When we return to hell, remember to say hi to him for me. A nasty smile appeared on Chunjiao's face. Fist shadows. Chunjiao finally released his full power. Terrifying fist shadows rained down on Antanabia. Every strike would knock the undigested souls out of Antanabia's body. However, even if the souls escaped from Antaz's body, they still couldn't escape the fist shadows. The ground was moving and the mountains were shaking. The entire town had been destroyed in the battle between Chunjiao and Antanabia. Fissures appeared on the ground. Feline and Kajar's expressions froze. What they were facing was a battle between inhuman beings. Just then, a ripple appeared in the ground. The ripple came from the center of Chunjiao and Antaz's battle. The ripple spread through the entire town. The corpses of the Satanists on the ground seemed to be pulled by some force and gathered at the center. Antanabia was lying in a big hole. The ripple spread out from his body. The ripple was pulling him underground. Antanabia climbed up with difficulty. He wanted to avoid the ripple, but he seemed to have fallen into a swamp. He couldn't escape the ripple from hell. No, I don't want to go back to hell. Antanabia struggled. He suddenly grabbed Chunjiao's ankle. He wanted to pull Chunjiao into hell too, but the ripple didn't affect him at all. Chapter 1684. No matter how Antanabia struggled, he couldn't break free from the sinking trend. In the end, only one hand was still on the surface. Only then did Chun take out the container of Satan's blood and toss it into Antanabia's hand. The Satan's blood and Antanabia sank into the ripples together. Just then, the Satan's blood suddenly floated up again, and the ripples disappeared. Beep beep. Chin picked up the other phone and dialed the handsome guy's number. Handsome, how did your Satan's blood return to the human world? It's for you, the guy said. Did you catch him? Yes. Turn the camera around and let me see. The handsome guy turned the camera, and Chin saw that the handsome guy was holding a terrifying giant demon in his hand. This was Antanabia's real body. His real body was like a small mountain. To be honest, if his real body was here, Chunjun might not be able to defeat him. Chen held the container of Satan's blood. How do I use this? Absorb it. How? Modify the spell I taught you last time. Oh, how are you going to deal with that traitor? Fear, despair, and regret. That's his fate. The handsome boy paused for a moment. Do you want his body? For what? Don't you have a lot of little demons at home? I'll give it to them as snacks. Okay, I'll take it next time I go to hell. The black snow had stopped. Feline and Kajol watched Chun walk out of the rubble. Both of them looked at Chun in disbelief. In their eyes, Chun was like a walking nuclear bomb. Chun sent those terrifying demons back to hell just like that. Jen walked to Kajol's side and glanced at her. She shook her head. She didn't have many days left. Chun couldn't do anything about it. She traded her life force for powerful magic power. No one could save her. Right now, her life force was like a candlelight that could go out at any time. Eat and have fun while you still have time, Chun said calmly. Don't leave any regrets in your life. Kajol stared at him, stunned. With that, Chun suddenly soared into the sky and disappeared into the night. Once again, Kajar and Feline felt Chun's mysteriousness and power. They had never seen a spiritualist that could fly. Even elementalists could only rely on wind magic to fly a short distance. However, Chun disappeared into the night sky. Feline suddenly snapped out of his daze. Katie, what did that man mean? It's nothing. Kajal shook her head. At this moment she felt exhausted. Not that her life had come to an end. It was because she had extinguished the burning life force. But even if it was extinguished now, it was already too late. She had burned too much of her life force. She did not have much time left. Chen Zhao secretly landed on the rooftop of the hotel. He was now completely naked. He had forgotten to prepare clothes in his spatial ring. This made him very embarrassed. Chen found his way to his room and quickly opened the door. Clang! Portia's face was covered with a facial mask, and the milk in her hand fell to the ground. You! Who let you into my room? Get out of the room! Chen would never give Portia the chance to speak first. He scolded her the moment they met, leaving her with no way to retaliate. Hurry up and get out! Chen roared. Portia was extremely angry. She tore off her facial mask and left. Chen heaved a long sigh. The next day, when Portia entered Chen's room again, she looked at Chen with a strange expression. She had already decided that Chen was a pervert. He was an absolute pervert. After all, running naked in a hotel was unheard of. Boss. Portia looked at Chen. Yes. Chen did not turn around. He did not know how to face Portia. Anyway, he did not plan to explain. He could not explain either. Order me a breakfast. 1:10, Chen said. Oh, book the plane tickets. The sooner the better. Boss, is the incident in New Orleans over? Yes, it's over, Chen replied. Portia felt that Chen's job was to go out and be a pervert. After breakfast, Portia started to help Chen pack. She booked a plane ticket for noon. Time was tight. After checking out, Chen and Portia were about to drive to the airport. Just then Feline appeared. Mr. Chen, can we talk? Feline. Portia looked at Portia in surprise. What's wrong? Chen asked. It's about Carly, that friend of mine. Chen got out of the car. Your friend is dying. Why? She obtained powerful magic by burning her life force. She won't live for more than half a year. Try to fulfill her wish as long as there's good food and fun, Chen said. Is there no way to save her? Feline's tone was heavy. After all, anyone who heard such news would not be happy. There's no way. Chen shook his head. There's no way at all. If she doesn't want to leave, just let her soul stay by your side after she dies, Chen said. After all, for spiritualists like you and me, death doesn't mean absolute disappearance. He also believed that Feline had a way to let Carly's soul stay. Okay, I should go. Chen returned to the car and said to Portia, let's go. On the way, Portia could not help but ask, Boss, what's your relationship with Feline? It's okay. Portia did not believe Chen's words. She felt that Chen and Feline had some unspeakable relationship. When Feline came, his expression was strange. When he left, he looked sad. She wondered if Chen had abandoned Feline after sleeping with him. However, since Chen was not willing to say, she could not do anything. After boarding the plane, Chen closed his eyes to rest. Boss, let's talk. Don't you like chatting? Chen opened his eyes and turned to look at Portia. What do you want to talk about? About your relationship with Feline. Do you like gossip that much? Do you have that kind of relationship with Feline? I don't have anything to do with her, Chen said calmly. She's just related to my work in New Orleans. Just then, another passenger arrived beside Chen and Portia. When Sam Mira saw Chen, he was stunned for a moment. Then he called the stewardess. Can I change seats? Sorry, miss. All first-class seats are taken unless you want to go downstairs. Chapter 1685. Portia turned to look at Sam Mira, and then at Chen Zhao. When Sam Mira looked at Chen Zhao, there was some anger in his eyes. As expected, his boss was also related to this woman. Sam Mira couldn't change seats, so he could only sit down again. However, his eyes were still filled with anger when he looked at Chen Zhao. Along the way, Sam Mira kept arguing with Chen Zhao. Portia was glad that she wasn't sitting between them. In fact, it was only Sam Mira who was arguing. On the other hand, Chen Zhao was calm. From start to finish, the two didn't say a word. Of course, their flight was very peaceful this time. There were no more accidents. When the flight arrived in Los Angeles, it was already 10 at night. Where do you live? I'll take you home. Chen Zhao finally got into his car. Portia hesitated, but still got into Chen Zhao's car. After sending Portia back to her place, Chen Zhao drove home. Hey West, I'm going back to Los Angeles. President, did you have anything to do with the explosion on the artificial island under the Lake Pontchartrain Bridge in New Orleans? I didn't cause it. Chen Zhao told him what had happened in a simple manner. Then last night, an abandoned town west of New Orleans was flattened. I was the one who sent a demon back to hell. The mastermind is Satanism. It's also my main reason for going to New Orleans this time. Can we report this to the anti-terrorism department? No need, Chen Zhao said. Don't let anyone outside the organization know. Got it. Chen Zhao didn't want the anti-terrorism department to know, because Chen Zhao's threat level was already big enough. If Chen Zhao's threat level increased again, then their previous plan against the supernatural organization might be useless. Then they would have to change their plan. It would be disadvantageous to the supernatural organization. After all, Chen Zhao's existence was a huge threat to the anti-terrorism department. Chen Zhao didn't want to care about the anti-terrorism department or their director Mansari. But if Mansari started targeting Chen Zhao, the tit-for-tat between them might turn into a war. If the situation escalated, it wouldn't be good for anyone. Both Chen Zhao and the supernatural organization hoped that the situation would remain like this. When Chen Zhao returned home, it was already midnight. Little Jerlin and little Larissa were already asleep. Fei Lai waited for Chen Zhao to arrive home. Darling, did you miss me? Chen Zhao couldn't wait to be intimate with Fei Lai. Just then, Belial's voice appeared in Chen Zhao's mind again. I don't think you've used this move before. Let's try it next time. Belial, are you the king of sloth or the king of sex? Why did it always appear at this time? Can we do it another time? Chen Zhao complained. Does it matter? This affects the mood, you know? Alright, I'll wait for you to finish. I'll discuss it with you later. Chen Zhao was working on Fei Lai. He thought that he could devote himself wholeheartedly now. Belia's voice rang out again. I heard you did Lucifer a big favor. Didn't I say to discuss it later? I'm not discussing posture with you. That won't do either. Alright, I'll wait for you to finish. Chen Zhao didn't stop until Fei Lai was exhausted. Is it okay now? Belia's voice sounded on time. Do you have a stopwatch? Chen Zhao was speechless. How many positions haven't you tried with me? Let's continue. How did you know about this? My foundation is all over hell. If I want to know, there's nothing I don't know, even if it's something that happens around Lucifer. Normally, I won't spy on what happens around him. After all, he's stronger than me. I have to maintain enough respect for him. Then why did you suddenly have a sudden impulse to spy on him this time? I had no choice. His subordinate kept screaming, damn human. My foundation seeped into his brain, and I knew what happened to him. Chen Zhao was curious about what foundation Belia was talking about. You want to know what foundation is? No. Even if he did, he wouldn't admit it. Since you want to know, I'll tell you. Belia didn't seem to understand Chen Zhao's words. It's an extension of my power. It's like air. It's everywhere. Unless it's a demon king on the same level as me, other demons will be affected by my foundation. If I want to, I can order them to do anything for me, even if it means suicide. What about me? If I enter hell, will your foundation be able to affect me? You're an anomaly, but it's because you're an anomaly that you're especially obvious in my senses. Are you interested in what I've done? Can't you see what I've done through my eyes? Do I need to go through my foundation? I can only sense it when you're having sex with a woman, because that's how we're connected. Chen Zhao didn't know how he should face this either. When will you come to hell? Or I can summon you now. I'm starting to miss you. We can try a new position. Chen Zhao was shocked. Fei Lai, who'd been resting her arm on his chest, opened her eyes slightly. What's wrong? Nothing, just a nightmare. Chen Zhao comforted her. Fei Lai rolled her eyes. She retracted her arm and turned to go back to sleep. No, I'm going to rest at home for a few days, Chen Zhao said to Belia. If you want, find a banana yourself. I don't need inferior products. Chen Zhao was speechless. Is your foundation the demonic realm? Yes and no. What do you mean? Simply put, it's something more advanced. If you come to hell next time, we can discuss this while doing business. Why do I have to wait until I go to hell? Can't we do it now? Our connection is weakening again. If you're willing to hug that woman next to you again, we can continue talking. Forget it. Let's talk next time. I'm going to sleep. Finally, I'll help you sleep. No. Chen Zhao didn't even have a chance to resist. There was only one last thought in his mind. Wasn't the power of a demon king unable to affect the real world? Then Chen Zhao completely lost consciousness. When Chen Zhao opened his eyes again, it was already noon the next day. You're awake? Get up and eat. Fei Lai walked into the bedroom and saw Chen Zhao standing up. Chapter 1686. Hi Mr. Chen, long time no see. Where have you been these days? Kalon came to Minghua Villa. New Orleans, Chen Zhao said. Let's go. Let's spar for a bit. By then, Kalon had already put on his boxing suit. New Orleans? I heard that many big things have happened in New Orleans recently. First, the explosion on the artificial island at Lake Pontchartrain. Then the serial murders. Kalon was very interested in this topic. Mr. Chen, do you know any inside stories that haven't been reported in the news? Yes. Chen Zhao nodded. But I won't tell you. Disappointed, Kalon bumped fists with Chen Zhao. Then Chen Zhao started his usual punching routine. I haven't seen you for a few days. You've improved a lot in using magic. Did you go on a mission again? Mr. Chen, I'm not alone, Kalon said. I know 2 spiritualists and went with them. Are you sure it's not a trap? Definitely not. Tell me their names. I'll investigate for you. Kalon had known since the last incident. He already knew that Chen Zhao was very powerful in LA. He was also willing to trust Chen Zhao. Kalon told Chen Zhao the names of the 2 spiritualists and immediately told him about them. Just then, an old car drove into Minghua Villa. Portia walked into the villa. Ms. Fei Lai, hello. Portia, hello. Please sit. Where's the owner? He's boxing on the beach. Portia walked to the front yard and saw that Chen Zhao was sparring with someone. To be honest, when Portia came to Minghua Villa for the first time, she was really shocked by the extremely luxurious villa. This was her second time here, and she still couldn't hide her shock. Of course, what surprised her the most were the beasts in Chen Zhao's house. She'd been someone's personal assistant before. That rich man also liked pets. There were 2 leopards at home, but the previous employer's leopards were kept in a cage. Chen Zhao's beasts, on the other hand, were all free to run around. Most importantly, they were actually with the child. Portia felt that Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were definitely the most careless parents. No matter how tame a beast was, it was still a beast. Weren't they afraid that the pets would suddenly go crazy and hurt the children? Portia, you can go play on the beach, or take a dip in the sea. Oh right, I have diving equipment and oxygen tanks at home. At this, Portia was also a little tempted. However, she was also worried that she would be neglecting her duty. Let's go. Just think of it as accompanying me. Chen won't blame you. Fei Lai could see that Portia was tempted. All right. For Portia, diving was an expensive activity. After all, in some coastal projects, diving for half an hour would cost more than $200. Chen Zhao's house had the most advanced and expensive diving equipment. Portia had been worried that there wouldn't be 2 sets of diving equipment for women. However, when Feilai opened the storage compartment, a voice suddenly rang out. Only then did Portia realize that her worries were completely unnecessary. There were about 10 sets of diving equipment and oxygen cylinders neatly arranged in the cabin. Chen Zhao didn't need this equipment. Feilai wasn't the only one who could use the equipment. Usually, when Chen Zhao's friends came over to play, it would come in handy when they wanted to dive. Portia was actually a beginner in diving. She had only dived once in her life. However, she could still recognize how expensive all this diving equipment was. Her previous employer had one too. He'd shown it off to her before. Choose a mouthpiece that you're comfortable with. Feilai was a member of the coastal rescue team. Plus, she had a professional diving license. Thus, she knew the precautions for diving very well. After explaining a few things to Portia, she took Portia into the sea. Actually, diving wasn't difficult. At least, amateur divers didn't need a license. Only deep diving required a professional diving license. As long as it wasn't more than 20 meters deep, it was basically safe. Of course, Feilai wouldn't take Portia deep diving. This was an undamaged area. Therefore, the underwater scenery here was exceptionally beautiful. Portia was almost mesmerized by the picturesque underwater scenery. It was too beautiful. Schools of fish and colorful coral reefs. Just then, a black shadow loomed over Portia's head. At first, Portia didn't notice it. But suddenly, the schools of fish around her disappeared. When they looked up, they saw a huge fish belly above their heads. Portia was so scared that her mouthpiece fell out. Seawater instantly poured into her mouth. Feilai hurriedly picked up the mouthpiece and stuffed it into Portia's mouth. Feilai waved her hand and held Portia's hand, comforting her uneasiness and fear. By then, Old Guan had already circled around and was in front of them. Portia was so scared that she wanted to run. Feilai pulled her back. Old Guan was already in front of them. Feilai reached out to touch his body. Portia was stunned. This was the most ferocious beast in the sea. Feilai wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she took the initiative to touch it. Oh my god, this great white shark didn't attack Feilai. Feilai gestured at Portia, asking her if she wanted to come and try. Portia gave it a wide berth. She didn't want to be close to a great white shark. Feilai waved her hand. The shark swam away and didn't disturb them again. After traveling for more than 40 minutes and using up 3/4 of the oxygen, Feilai brought Portia back to the yacht. Miss Feilai, aren't you afraid of that great white shark? Even though they were back on the yacht, Portia was still scared. That big guy won't hurt people, Feilai said calmly. But it's a shark. It's our child. Portia was speechless. She didn't think that an adult great white shark was a child. Great white sharks were definitely the sharks that killed the most people in the shark family. Apart from tiger sharks, no other sharks could compete with it. They might not like the taste of human flesh, but they like to bite people. After returning to the villa, Portia's emotions gradually calmed down. Chen Zhao was already there. He glanced at the 2 girls. Did you go diving? Yes, Portia was scared by Old Guan. Chen Zhao glanced at Portia. Pack up. We're going out later. Okay, boss. You're going out? Are you coming back for dinner? Feilai asked. I should be back soon. I'm going to sign the contract. Steven, Rasfa, and I will sign the box office share and number of showtimes with Bath Corporation. Chapter 1687. Huh. Steven and Rasfa aren't here yet? Chen Zhao sat in the conference room of Bath Corporation. Steven had told Chen Zhao to sign the contract, but he was late. I hope it won't affect the signing, Chen Zhao mumbled. Portia stood beside Chen Zhao. She looked at Chen Zhao's unsightly posture. Boss, shouldn't you be more serious? After all, this was a formal place, not a roadside stall. Chen Zhao leaning against the chair like this was too unsightly. Portia was confused. What contract was Chen Zhao here to sign? She knew about Bath Corporation, the largest theater company in North America. It could even be called the largest theater chain in the world. Portia was curious. What business did Chen Zhao have to cooperate with Bath Corporation? Just then Kefui Bus walked in. Kefui Bus walked in with a domineering attitude. Her expression was even colder. Her gaze was like a sword as she pointed at Portia. Who are you? Security, get her out of here. Wait. I'm. Portia hurriedly waved her hands and turned to look at Chen Zhao. She hoped that Chen Zhao could explain the situation. I don't know her. Chen Zhao turned his head away. Portia was dumbfounded. How could you trick your own assistant like that? Suddenly, Kefui Bus laughed again. Are you kidding, Mess? Are you Chen's personal assistant? Portia's emotions were really high. She felt like she was about to collapse. Both of them seemed to be very unreliable people. Both Kefui Bus and Chen Zhao were very unreliable. Miss Kefui, call me Bus. Bus, Steven and Rasfa aren't here yet, so we might have to delay the signing, Chen Zhao said. No need to wait for them, Kefui Bus said. Kefui Base said. The two of them have already brought the power of attorney. You can be fully responsible for signing the contract. Chen Zhao was dumbfounded. The power of attorney they'd given him was in your hands? What were Steven and Rasfa doing? Chen Zhao picked up the power of attorney and looked. Then he dialed Steven's number. Steven, you and Rasfa aren't coming? We're busy so we can't go. Anyway, the details have already been confirmed. You just need to sign now. Fuck, Chen Zhao cursed. Portia felt that her boss was too unreliable. He was talking on the phone in front of his business partner. And he was so outspoken. But then he looked at Kefui Base. Kefui Bath was still smiling. She didn't seem to blame or angry at all. Their relationship seemed to be very good, very familiar. Chen Zhao put down the phone and shrugged at Kefui Base. Okay, Buzz, where's the contract? Let's sign the contract. Kefui Buzz placed the contract before Chen Zhao, her eyes fixed on Chen Zhao. Without even looking at the contract, Chen Zhao signed his name. Aren't you going to look at the contract? No need, Chen Zhao said confidently. You won't scam me for a few $1 million. Even if Kefui Base wanted to trick Chen Zhao and tamper with the contract, it would only be a few $1 million at most. But the price was that the Bath Group's reputation would be ruined. If a company lost credibility, then the company would face more than tens of millions of dollars in losses. Kefui Base had a net worth of several billion US dollars, most of which was Base Corporation's shares. Therefore, she would definitely not do such a loss-making transaction. Of course, there was another important reason. Their friendship. Chen Zhao didn't like the kind where he signed a contract with a friend, and a bunch of lawyers would read it. Back then, when Chen Zhao, Steven and Rasfa had negotiated a contract, they'd just randomly drafted a document and then signed it. They didn't bring a lawyer, or even an assistant. Moreover, they'd negotiated and signed the contract while all of them were drunk. If it was just a business cooperation, there would be no friendship. For example, when Chen Zhao ordered a super yacht from Seagate Yachts, Chen Zhao had Alex read the contract from beginning to end to make sure there were no clauses that were disadvantageous to him. Portia felt that her boss was too ridiculous. Who signed a contract like this? Even if he didn't bring a lawyer, he should at least read the contract himself. If you're lazy, I can do it for you. Who would just take out a contract and sign it? Chen Zhao pushed the contract to Kefui Base. Kefui Base also signed her name. Chen, to celebrate our cooperation, shouldn't you treat me to a meal? Kefui Base didn't care that there was a third person in the meeting room. She looked at Chen Zhao teasingly. Base, I have other plans tonight. Let's arrange another time. Okay, let's do it this weekend. Don't stand me up. As if she didn't understand Chen Zhao's hidden meaning, Kefui Base directly set a time with Chen Zhao. Okay, Portia. Remember to remind me about the meal with Base this weekend. Yes, boss. If you don't want to come, don't push the responsibility to this cute girl, Kefui Base reminded. Chen Zhao was speechless. He really did plan to do that. When the weekend came, he'd use Portia not telling him as an excuse to forget about the meal. Portia stared at Chen Zhao in shock. She realized that Chen Zhao really did plan to do that. He was using her as an excuse. Of course not. Even if Portia doesn't remember, I'll remember it. Chen Zhao smiled awkwardly. Kefui Base had exposed his plan in front of him. Even if Chen Zhao forgot, he still had to go. It was Portia's first time seeing how shameless her boss was. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first. I won't disturb your work. Are you that unwilling to chat with me? Kefui Base stared at Chen Zhao, resentment in her eyes. Of course not. I just don't want to disturb your work. Even I'm not afraid. What are you afraid of? Actually, I have something else. Stephen and Rasva, those two old things, are definitely waiting for news. I need to tell them. Something that can be solved with a phone call. Kefui Base mumbled. Chen Zhao stood up helplessly. It's better to say this face to face. Okay. Don't forget about the weekend. Chen Zhao escaped from the base corporation's headquarters in a sorry state. Portia was filled with resentment toward Chen Zhao. The guy completely treated her as his scapegoat. Get in the car. What are you waiting for? I'll go home myself. I'm not planning on sending you home. Don't think too much. Your car is still at my house. I'm taking you home, and you can drive back yourself. Chapter 1688. Portia was annoyed. She would throw a tantrum with Chen Zhao sometimes. But as his personal assistant, she would always be the weaker one. After Chen Zhao parked the car, he watched Portia get into her own car. Portia, you better get another car. As my assistant, you're driving a car like this. You're embarrassing me. Portia looked at the row of luxury cars in Chen Zhao's garage. She couldn't help but feel excited. Was Chen Zhao going to give her a car? Or maybe lend it to her? I'll lend you money to buy a new car. I hope you'll at least drive a brand new car next time. Portia was disappointed. Boss, my car is secondhand, but it's 80% new. Chen Zhao went up and kicked the front of the car. With a clang, the bumper fell off. Are you sure it's 80% new? Portia wanted to cry. Damn, that secondhand car shop played me. She had no idea that Chen Zhao's kick was completely unreasonable. Blood Mary, are you in Los Angeles now? Yes. Can you come and pick me up? In this world, there were very few people who could be picked up by Blood Mary personally. Coincidentally, this old man from China was one of them. Zhang Tianyi had a goatee. He was 120 years old, but his hair was still thick and black. He wore a suit and round-framed sunglasses. He held a pair of jade balls in his right hand. No one could have imagined that the old man in front of them was one of the most powerful figures in the world of spirits. Dragon Tiger Mountain's celestial master sect, Zhang Tianyi. What was Zhang Tianyi's status in the world? He'd seen more world leaders than the current leaders of China. Most of the time, it was the world leaders who begged to see him. For example, the people sent by the Japanese government had almost knelt in front of Zhang Tianyi's house. Zhang Tianyi had tried to chase them away with a broom several times, but they were too shameless. I won't leave even if you chase me away. Kill me if you can. Anyway, that was how it was. Behind him were two men in black suits and sunglasses. They looked like bodyguards. In fact, they were all Zhang Tianyi's disciples. Dao Yi, take a picture for me, Zhang Tianyi ordered. Dao Yi took the phone and was about to take a picture of Zhang Tianyi. Wait, this angle is not good. Keep some distance or you'll make my face bigger. Not long after, the 23rd generation Blood Mary arrived. However, a large number of FBI officers also came with them, and they immediately blocked the exit. Zhang Tianyi's grand disciples, Dao Yi and Dao Er, immediately assumed a fighting stance. What are you guys doing? Dao Er Chang was big and burly, but he was also a simple-minded person. He thought the policemen were here to harm them. At this time, the 23rd generation Blood Mary walked over. Stop. They mean no harm. Zhang Tianyi waved his hand and walked toward the 23rd Blood Mary. Blood Mary, Dao Master. The two of them solemnly cupped their hands and bowed to each other. Then, Zhang Tianyi dropped his solemn posture and put one hand on the shoulder of the 23rd generation Blood Mary. Blood Mary, why did you call so many people over? I didn't call them. They listened in on our conversation and knew that you came to Los Angeles, so they all came over. Blood Mary said helplessly. She turned to look at the two young people behind Zhang Tianyi. Are they your grand disciples or great-grand disciples? They are Dao Yi and Dao Er, Zhang Tianyi introduced casually. He was the one who came up with these two Taoist names. Zhang Tianyi was from the Tian generation, and his Taoist name was Tianyi, which meant that he was Taoist Tianyi. Dao Yi. Blood Mary was stunned. He's related to Dao Yi and Xihua? Dao Yi and Xihua were of the same generation as them. Back then, They could be said to be the most supreme beings in the entire spiritual world. Now only the two of them were left. The others of the same generation could not escape death. Dao Yi and Xiuhua's grandson. Coincidentally, our dragon tiger mountain has reached the Dao generation, so we gave him his grandfather's Taoist name. Is it because you're lazy? The 23rd generation Blood Mary asked suspiciously. Let's change the topic. Zhang Tianyi looked at the little girl behind Blood Mary. Mana? This is little Mary, right? I saw it more than 10 years ago. Greetings, Dao Master. Mana Blood Mary didn't dare to act like a princess in front of Zhang Tianyi, although Zhang Tianyi was younger than his grandmother by a generation. However, they were of the same generation. Moreover, she had heard from her grandmother that Zhang Tianyi was stronger than her. The supreme existence of Taoism. He had vanquished countless demons and devils in his life. Mana, you go with Dao 1 and Dao 2. I'll ride with Dao Sovereign, said the 23rd Blood Mary. Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation Blood Mary got into the same car. And the 23rd generation was the one driving. Blood Mary, are you sure you won't take me to the ditch? As long as I open my sky eye, I can see through the darkness. Are you still afraid that my old eyes won't work? 23rd generation said as if it was a fact. Zhang Tianyi could only buckle his seatbelt. Have you agreed to help the Japanese? I'm thinking about it, Zhang Tianyi said. There's a kid in Los Angeles. He's about the same age as your grand disciple, but he's already on par with us. 23rd generation said. He's from the Han territory. Do you know which sect he's from? Are you sure? Zhang Tianyi's eyes flashed. I've met him before. I can only confirm that he's from the strengthening sect. His body is almost invincible. There's also a dragon head in his house. He must have slaughtered it recently. He's quite bold. Isn't he afraid that the dragons will come to him? I don't know what he's thinking. To be honest, even people like Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation, even if they had the means to slaughter a dragon, even if they killed a dragon, they wouldn't dare to brazenly place the dragon head in front of their house. That would be a provocative act. Take me to see him. I know about the techniques of the sects in China. Zhang Tianyi also wanted to see this genius. After all, their generation was already old. If they didn't have a pillar, they would probably have to wait for another few hundred years. And there might not even be one person at their level in a few hundred years. Their generation could be said to be competing with each other. If there could be another top figure among the younger generation in China, it would be immeasurable for the inheritance of the spiritual world in China. It could even strengthen China's position as the leader of the spiritual world. Although China was recognized as the leader of the spiritual world, but there were still many challenges. If there could be another peerless master at the Shangqing level, it would be an exciting thing for the entire spiritual world in China. Chapter 1689. In the morning, a few uninvited guests came to Chen Zhao's house. Blood Mary was still as arrogant as ever. Brother Dao Yi, Brother Dao Air. That's the rude guy I told you about. Help me teach him a lesson later. Dao Yi and Dao Air weren't hot-headed girls like Blood Mary. Ever since they'd arrived at Mingyue Villa, they'd felt that this place wasn't normal. Moreover, the 23rd generation and their grandmaster all had serious expressions on their faces. The 23rd generation even looked a little frightened, because the current Chen Zhao was completely different from the last two times she'd seen him. Zhang Tianyi had thought that he was already the most powerful person in the world. But today, he finally understood what it meant by there is always someone better than you out there. But then again, he wouldn't be surprised if the person was an old man who lived in seclusion in the mountains. Wuxia was vast and full of resources. There were countless talented people. It wasn't strange to see one or two old monsters occasionally. But now, he realized that the person was actually a young man in his 20s. So young that it made his hair stand on end. Even Dao Yi was 3 or 4 years older than Chen Zhao. But now this young man was on equal footing with them. No, even during the confrontation just now, Zhang Tianyi and Blood Mary had worked together to barely stop Chen Zhao. Mr. Chun, nice to meet you. Zhang Tianyi cupped his hands and smiled. Sir, how should I address you? One shouldn't hit a smiling person. Apart from the confrontation when they'd met, the old man had shown enough respect. I'm Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi smiled. Mr. Chun, you have traces of the Qingyi sex techniques on you. But as far as I know, the Qingyi sex techniques can't reach this level. Have you cultivated other techniques? I've inherited the Qingyi sex techniques. Chen Zhao didn't deny it. After all, Chen Zhao had benefited from the Qingyi sect before, so it was natural for him to promote the Qingyi sect. Even if Chen Zhao wasn't the Qingyi sect's disciple, he couldn't say that he had nothing to do with the Qingyi sect. If Chen Zhao said that, he would be too heartless. Chen Zhao didn't plan to burn the bridge after crossing it. But because I'm lacking in techniques, I have to figure it out on my own after reaching ultimate. Plus some miraculous encounters, I've made some progress. Fuck, you call this progress? Do you have any misunderstandings about the phrase small success? Zhang Tianyi didn't know how to respond. However, he didn't doubt Chen Zhao's answer. Although Longhu Mountain had a complete set of techniques, there was no instruction on breaking through to the Shangqing realm. Similarly, Zhang Tianyi had only managed to break through to the Prime Clarity realm after some fortuitous encounters. Not only him, but even the 23rd generation next to him felt the same. However, Chen Zhao's cultivation was a little too high. Mr. Chen, how about we spar? Forget it. Old Mr. Zhang. If you want to fight with me, you'd better comprehend the spiritual energy of heaven and earth first. If you haven't comprehended the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, I'm afraid you won't be able to hurt me even if I stand still. Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation both gasped. One had to admit that Chen Zhao's words were too arrogant. Insanely arrogant. I can't even hurt him if I stand still. Both of them were the top spiritualists in the world. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was a peerless expert. But now, Chen Zhao was saying that they couldn't hurt him even if he stood still. What do you mean by spiritual energy of heaven and earth? The two didn't argue with Chen Zhao. It was an established fact that Chen Zhao was stronger than them. But Chen Zhao's words clearly showed that he was in a higher realm than them. Miss 23rd, can I borrow your alternate space for a while? My pleasure. The 23rd generation instantly activated the alternate space. He directly excluded everyone else. Only Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi were included. One had to admit that the 23rd generation was very good at using this spell. Even Chen Zhao was far inferior to the 23rd generation. Being close to the spiritual energy of the world is something I comprehended from a fairy. Although the fairies are not strong individually, and can even be said to be very weak for people of our level, they have an innate talent for being close to the spiritual energy of the world. Chen Zhao suddenly opened his eyes. Instantly, Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation felt that the elements around them were sucked dry. Then Chen Zhao cast the giant miracle god. A 5-meter-tall giant appeared before Zhang Tianyi and the 23rd generation. The two of them sucked in a cold breath. Chen Zhao's aura was completely different from before. Before, Chen Zhao's aura had already overshadowed their combined strength. But now, Chen Zhao was more than 10 times weaker than them. In other words, it's controlling the power of heaven and earth, Chen Zhao said. I mainly train my body, so the way I can get close to the spiritual energy of heaven and earth is to guide it into my body. It's similar to the unity of heaven and man in novels. As long as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth doesn't dry up, my power won't dry up. Is this your strongest state right now? Chen Zhao shook his head. No, I have other ways to increase my power. If I use them all, I can increase my power by several times on top of this. How's your destructive power in your strongest state? It should be easy to destroy a small town. I can change the geological structure in a small area. As for defense, last time, I was slightly injured in the center of a 5,000-ton explosion. That's about my limit. The two of them sucked in a deep breath again. They had already evaluated Chen Zhao's combat ability. But after hearing Chen Zhao's honest explanation, they were still astonished. With your current abilities, I'm afraid you're almost at the level of the legendary gods, right? There's no comparison in the real world, so I'm not sure. Mr. Chen, do you know that the seal on the stone of slaughter in Japan has been broken? I heard that. My subordinates plan to go there and take a look, Chen Zhao said. It's said that the fox demon sealed in the stone of slaughter also has earth-shattering power. I think you're not that far from it. You want me to fight with that fox demon? Of course, if you are willing to compete, there should be no one who can stop you. The risk is not small. Moreover, it is not good to take the initiative to break the seal. However, according to my estimation, the seal on the stone of slaughter is about to be broken. Zhang Tianyi said with a profound meaning. 1,000 years ago, the Onmyoji in Japan could seal the fox demon. It's not impossible now, right? Do you think that they were able to seal it on their own? Wasn't it? Back then, the Xianmen from Han also went east to help. That fox demon is probably about the same as the powerful monsters sealed in our country. Chapter 1690. The seal of the Stone of Slaughter didn't matter to Chen Zhao, even if the supernatural organization wanted to accept the mission. However, this mission was not mandatory. If it exceeded the value of the reward, he could just give up. But for the Japanese government, it would be a disaster. According to Zhang Tianyi's guess, if the fox demon was as strong as him, the conditions to defeat him were probably similar to Chen Zhao's. In terms of modern weapons, nuclear weapons or super bombs could be used. But using super weapons with shocking destructive power would first cause impact and damage. Secondly, if the fox demon ran to a densely populated area, the two options would be useless. No government could drop a bomb in a densely populated area. So in the end, he still had to solve it through the spiritual world. That was the most practical way. Chen Zhao thought about it, considering the pros and cons. What can I get if I help? If it was in China, Chen Zhao would have to consider if people would die. But it was in Japan. Chen Zhao didn't plan on doing voluntary work. How much do you want? I don't want money. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. Unless the Japanese government asks for $10 billion, but that's impossible. Zhang Tianyi also knew that although some things could be solved with money, it was indeed the most ideal result. But Chen Zhao asked for $10 billion right off the bat. It wasn't something the Japanese government could afford. Then what do you want? Don't Japan have 3 holy artifacts? I want that. Kusanagi sword, Yasakani no Magatama, and Yada no Kagami? You're thinking too much. To them, it's the symbol of their Amaterasu god. How can they give it to you? Apart from that, I can't think of anything else, Chen Zhao said, shrugging. To be honest, Chen Zhao also didn't know what to do with the 3 things. But when they invaded China, Japan had taken many things from China. It wasn't too much for him to ask for 1 or 2 national treasures, right? Yes, definitely not. It didn't matter what they were. What was important was the symbolism. If you really want it, I can help you negotiate, Zhang Tianyi said. At least we can negotiate for 1. Oh, don't tell them I want it, Chen Zhao said. Don't tell anyone that I want it. Chen Zhao was afraid that the Japanese government would regret it and ask him for it. Chen Zhao wasn't a loner. His family and the supernatural society would be affected. Once it involved the dialogue between countries, he would have no right to speak. Therefore, Chen Zhao's idea was to let Zhang Tianyi take the blame. He was so keen to convince himself. Most likely, he didn't get any benefits either, even though he didn't care about most of the threats in the world anymore. But Chen Zhao couldn't fight the government head-on. No matter how strong they were, it was impossible for them to go against the government. Unless Chen Zhao wanted to become a mountain king one day. However, it was not easy to be the king of the mountain. Sooner or later, he would become a thorn in the government's side. Just like the demon fox Tamamonome from 1,000 years ago. Chen Zhao felt that there shouldn't be anyone on the same level as him in that era. But in the end, it still ended up being sealed. If she chose the same path as him, perhaps Tamamonome's fate was a good example for him. Chen Zhao only wanted to get benefits secretly. He couldn't bear the burden of this mine. Zhang Tianyi could handle it. His seniority, his prestige, his influence, and even the Longhu Mountain Celestial Master sect behind him. All of them could make the Japanese government flinch. In this era's spiritual world, the boundaries between countries were already very blurry. There weren't any battles between spiritualists from different countries like in novels. At least, Chen Zhao had never heard of such a thing. The spiritual world was more like an academic world. The various sects and forces were all institutions of higher learning. There were academic exchanges between them, but there were also conflicts. But most of it was normal competition. He hadn't heard of a country having a powerful treasure, and then spiritualists from other countries going there to fight. Of course, the ultimate influence of the spiritual world was still the government. The government was also an existence that no spiritualist could ignore. Chen Zhao was hired by the Supernatural Society and became its president. It was like an academically poor university that needed a professor to be their tutor or dean. The Supernatural Society was also influenced by the government. Also, most of the members of the supernatural organization were Americans. They admired Chen Zhao, but Chen Zhao couldn't let them betray their country just because of their admiration. Chen Zhao, Zhang Tianyi and 23rd Gen talked a lot. Basically, it was to expand his network. These were the two most powerful spiritualists in the East and West. There were only benefits to being on good terms with them. Even if they couldn't be friends, they didn't want to be enemies. As for whether they could understand the method to get close to the elements, that would depend on their own luck. But Chen Zhao didn't have high hopes for it. Because this was Chen Zhao's personal train of thought and method, it might not be suitable for them. They were at the end of their path. Chen Zhao provided his train of thought to them. Whether or not they could walk their own path was their business. 23rd Gen removed the alternate dimension, and the three appeared before everyone. Dao 1 Dao Air, come here. Grandmaster. This is Mr. Chen. He's a very powerful person. Anyway, he's only stronger than me. If you interact with him in the future, don't be rude. Zhang Tianyi didn't speak in a proper manner, but he pointed out Chen Zhao's importance. If I die and you encounter something you can't solve, ask Mr. Chen for help. After all, we're all from China. I think Mr. Chen will give us a discount. Zhang Tianyi's words seemed frivolous, but he was actually pointing out the key points for Dao 1 and Dao Air. The two were surprised by Zhang Tianyi's words, but they definitely wouldn't refute Zhang Tianyi. In their hearts, Zhang Tianyi was their sky. Mr. Chen, if you want to read the books of the Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Masters sect, just tell me. Before Chen Zhao could be happy, Zhang Tianyi added, we'll also give you a discount. Pfft. He didn't have the demeanor of an otherworldly master at all. Actually, Zhang Tianyi's meaning was obvious. Helping each other was beneficial for everyone. Zhang Tianyi wasn't asking for a discount. He was implying that they could interact more. If Chen Zhao wanted to read the books of the Dragon Tiger Mountain Celestial Masters sect, he wouldn't have to pay anything. He would owe them a favor. This was Zhang Tianyi's shrewdness. He was completely different from 23rd Gen. 23rd Gen wanted to build a relationship with Chen Zhao, and also wanted to get his granddaughter to be his student. On the other hand, Zhang Tianyi wanted to use interaction to tie down this relationship. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.